Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 221,002 Core 2 A+ study group for March of 2021. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. We're a little late getting started because of a loose cable, of all things. The streaming device was not working, but I unplugged it and plugged it back in again like any good technician. And guess what? Fixed the problem. So let's get some headphones in. I've already just done the podcast intro. You just missed that. That was pretty exciting. Hi, everybody. Let's pop out the chat room so I can see everyone. There you are. And we'll put this over here. Actually, I need this full screen for a moment so that I can look at the stream health, which is another important one. Hi, everybody. Let's see. I have not really, because I just sat down, I've not done the normal pre-show. So let's do a quick check of everything. Laptop, are we up? Yes, we are. There it is. We are recording here. We're recording down here, so recordings are going. Nice. We've got about 6.5 minutes before we get started. Let's see. Presentation is ready. Good. I don't have up the details on Socrative, so you can't see the questions. So let's bring that up. Let me log in as the teacher. Quiz. Let's do A+ 1002. This is 2021 in March. Next, teacher paste, don't need your name, and start. See, we are there. Let's check lower thirds real quick. That looks good. That's where you'll be able to do that. And let me quickly check this. That looks good too. Well, I think we're in good shape. I think we're in pretty nice condition to have this here. What else have we got ready to go? I think that's sort of it. I think we've got everything in place. I could be powering my phone during this point. It's kind of scary. The OBS machine is right here. This is at least the video from it that I monitor when doing these live streams. And it is, when I turned it on, it would just flash. I would barely see a little bit of the video that was supposed to be there, and then it would immediately go back to the test screen. And so that was a significant problem. It was just flashing. And so I did the normal things. You reboot, same thing. Check the cable where it plugs into the device, into the OBS machine. No difference. And then I finally went back and went over to the actual. This is the video switcher. The single box is the 4K video switcher. It's a Blackmagic Television Studio 4K. And I unplugged. It's a coax cable running SDI for the video. I know it's kind of weird, but that's the way we do it. And it has, because it is a BNC connector on the end, so I unplugged it, plugged it back in, and everything worked fine. Nothing has really changed since 2 days ago when we did a live stream. But of course, it kind of throws everything off when you do that. Hey, everybody in the chat room. Good to have you here. Thanks for being here. Don't worry, coffee's right. You should see the coffee. It's right here. It's kind of hard to see, though, isn't it? It's right there. It's here. Do not worry. I got the coffee. We're in good shape there. I think I've got pretty much everything I need. There's the notifications that have gone out. Notifications should be live on the site now. We're in good condition here. When you think you've tested everything, I had everything ready to go, had all the cameras set up and everything, but I didn't check the streaming server before coming back in here and getting started. So it's one of those that you will learn quickly to test everything as you go through this. So in this first hour, I'm going to ask you questions from the Core 2 exam. Almost said Core 1. We did Core 1 2 days ago. We'll do Core 2 today. And in the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines. I guess I could go ahead and get my Skype ready to go here. You will not be using Skype. Well, you might be using Skype on your side, but you will not be calling my Skype. You'll be calling in the phone number. And I'll give you that information in a bit. But we're in pretty good shape there. That looks good. So now we wait 2 minutes and we get started. And that's the way we do that. Let's get this ready. Might as well get this up and running. That looks good. I think this might work, everybody. I still have 2 cameras here to fill in. See those blank boxes down here? I need 2 more cameras. Where could we put them? I need like a bigger, wider view of the studio from in front. That would be kind of nice. Or to have one that was further back or up high. I don't know. I'm not sure how to do it. I was also thinking of putting one up high so that I could have something on my desk and I could, point at things. And it would be great. I know pet cam would be great, but they're in the other room. They're over there. They're fine. You don't want them creating problems on the live stream. For sure. They wouldn't know what to do, and they'd just flop around the whole time anyway. We'll have to at one point bring them in so that you could see the disaster that they create wherever they go. We're good here. Times are good. All right. That looks good. Minute to go, everybody. We're going to do a live stream. I guess I could pot that up. I already have that call-in lines are ready to go in the next hour. That's good. Okay. Now we just do a live stream. We got about a minute, and I'll get started here. All new questions every month, so this will be something new you have not seen before. This should be pretty good. What else do we need anything else? I think we're good. You can see me. I can see you. I think that's all we need. We just needed some way to make sure that it would work today. Boy, you don't like that when that happens. But that's our last one, right? Now we're done. Now we're done with the technical issues. Now we can push ahead and not have to worry about it for the rest of the live stream. Isn't that how it works? I'm pretty sure that's how it works. If not, then we'll have to figure out something else. Let's get things started, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2021 Core 2 A+ study group, coming to you live from Messer Studios. My name is James Messer, and in this first hour, I will be asking you questions that come directly from the CompTIA 220 1002 A+ exam. There will be plenty of content to go through. These are new questions every month, so these are always fun to go through and learn something new about the Core 1 and Core 2 exams. Today is our Core 2 exam study group, and you can, of course, follow along if you're here live, and a number of you are. Hello, chat room. Thanks for being here live. Thanks for following us and keeping track of what we're doing. And if you are watching this live, you can answer the questions online in real time by opening up a new browser window, browsing to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. There's a question waiting for you right now if you do that. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, you're not going to be able to do that. That's not going to work for you. But you will be able to at least follow along with us. So you can pretend that you're locking in your answer as we go along. There's also a mobile app you can get to do this. Go to your favorite app store and download the Socrative Student app. That is the name of the app, Socrative Student app. There's a Socrative Teacher app. That's mine. You want the Socrative Student app, that's yours. It will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. And if you do that, and that works out, you will see a question there that we posed last month. This is our rewind question to see if you're able to get in and answer the questions properly. The question asks, which of the following would be the best way to manage the user applications that launch during startup in Windows 10? Would that be services, task manager, programs and features, device manager, or task scheduler? Got a number of options available to you. If you think you know what that answer is, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That's our number one rule of the live stream. But we'll come back to this question in just a moment. We'll break it down, see more details about it. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups for the Core 2 exam once a month. You can always find out when the next exam is going to be at the Professor Messer website. ProfessorMesser.com/calendar will get you there. Of course, I have new videos all the time going through and posting. I just finished a new one. I uploaded it, but it's not live yet. It's on my Security Plus course, and the only way you'll know when I post it is if you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell. You'll find that at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. I hope to have a number of them available later today, so this will be great. We also have daily pop quiz questions for A+. You'll find those on Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, and ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. If you like your question with a pretty picture to go along with it, I try to pick out some good ones for Instagram, so hopefully you'll like that. It'd be useful to have that functionality there. There is, of course, other things that we do all the time, so feel free to go through, check on YouTube, check on the Instagram, check on the Twitter. Who knows what's going on and wanting to work through these. Today we're going to be talking about topics from the 220-1002 exam. This is the second or the other. You don't have to do them in any particular order, but this is the other of the first of the two you have to do. You have to get both of these exams passed to earn your A+. This was an exam that came out on January 15th, 2019. We estimate, based on those time frames, that the possible retirement date for this will probably be around July of 2022. So for those of you that are watching this live in 2021, you saw July, and you got very nervous all of a sudden. Keep reading. It's July of 2022 next year. So the point to that is if you are studying for your exam right now, you're doing exactly the right thing. Keep studying for that exam. This is the version that you will be taking for the foreseeable future, certainly until July. And of course, that date can change. So always keep checking back with CompTIA's website. And that's what happens. You'll know exactly when that retirement date will be set at that point, or just keep checking back every month here. I'll keep you updated on the possible retirement dates. You'll know everything there is to know about these exams. The 220-1002 exam, you have to score 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. It's an odd scale. It's an odd scoring system. They don't tell us how the scoring system works. We have no idea how many points each question is worth. We believe it's a different number of points for every question. The point is just to do the best you can. And at the end of it, you have to at least have 700 points available that you can work through. This exam, if you are studying for the older version of the exam prior to January the 15th, and you've got old study materials, you'll find almost a quarter of this exam is brand new. So don't use your old materials to study. Buy new materials to be able to study so that you know you're learning the things that will be asked of you on the exam. So that's really, really important that you're able to get that. This was a pretty important update. A quarter of the content's new. So if you were to study from old materials and walk into the exam, 25% of the exam would be unknown to you. That's enough to fail, I would think. So don't do that. Make sure you've got the latest study materials. There's plenty of options on my site and recommendations that you could choose from. The topics we'll be studying today for the 1002 exam: operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. We'll be going through all four of those categories in this particular mix. Of course, I have all of my videos for you to watch online for free. You can go to YouTube at any time, click a button and watch them. There's no registration, there's no paywall, there's no requirement that you provide me with anything as long as you're watching those videos. Some people like to have offline versions of these videos, or they would like to have these videos in an audio format. Well, I have an offline version and an audio format you can purchase and download from my site, along with things like my course notes, my exam hacks ebook, my practice exams book, priority access to this study group, and there's other things here as well. I bundle all of that together into one thing. That is my success bundle for the 221,002. You can find it on my website at professormesser.com/1002success. Being able to step through that. There's also some free questions on my site. Archives from these study groups are available in what we call our Take 10 Challenge. These 10-question packages of Q&A that you can take on the site are free to also take at professormesser.com/take10. And I have questions there for A+, Network Plus, and at least the 501 Security Plus. We haven't done enough 601. Maybe I'll be able to do one Take 10 for 601. Lori will have to help me put that together. That'll be the next thing we do on our list. There's also a video replay of this available immediately afterwards. There is an audio replay that I also post after this. That audio replay is available at professormesser.com/podcast. And you can add this to your podcast listening program because there's an RSS feed on that page. And you can also stream it from that page. So you have lots of options for being able to watch or listen to this after it's over. And you can go back and listen to the entire archive of these. Years of these are available. Certainly for the A+, years of these are available. And you can go back in time and learn everything you need to learn for this exam. We've also got on our YouTube video description, because we do stream this live on YouTube and it's available immediately afterwards. And then my marketing manager, Lori, who is watching the replay of this, folks are already saying hi to Lori. Hi, everybody. Say hi to Lori. Lori is watching this, having to step through all of it and figuring out when the questions are asked, when the answers are given. She puts all of the timestamps into the video description, and it becomes a nice resource. Very useful to be able to have access to this. And that's available on my YouTube channel and the YouTube video description, usually about a day afterwards. So now we have to figure out, how does Lori spell her name? It's a really good question, and I don't think she cares as long as you say hi. You can spell it however you'd like. Same thing for me. I have no problem with that. Let's talk about that question we looked at earlier. The question was, which of the following would be the best way to manage the user applications that launch during startup in Windows 10? Would that be Services, Task Manager, Programs and Features, Device Manager, or Task Scheduler? 77% of you said Task Manager, which should not be confused with the 7% that said Services or 7% that said Programs and Features. And we messed up down here. 3% said Device Manager and 6% said Task Scheduler. That should have been that should have added up to 7, and it didn't. Added up to 9. We messed up the numbers thing on here. But you did get the question right, which really is the important part. Task Manager is the correct answer for this one, especially if you're trying to troubleshoot a problem with boot up. The Task Manager can be really, really useful. This is the Task Manager. It probably looks familiar. You'll notice in Windows 10, there's a Startup tab. And in that Startup tab, you can step through and manage which applications are starting when you get Windows up and running. And you can manage that process. You can enable and disable from there as well. Just right-click on it and you can disable an app. And then you can restart your computer and see, did it get better or worse or the same? And you'll be able to make a decision about troubleshooting this. Task Manager in Windows 10, really useful to be able to have that functionality. And that is the right answer here as well. Task Manager, if you answered B, 79% of you answered B, and you did that absolutely correct. That is the right answer. So that hopefully now you're able to get in, you're able to answer the questions, you're able to see the available answers. Some folks in the chat room were saying, well, when you lock in your answer, can you go back and change your answer? You can't. So once you lock it in, you've made a decision. Well, it's not the real exam. And even if you didn't get it exactly right, you can remember what you would want to change it to. So just remember that as we go through all of this. Now, one of the things that you may not realize if you've never taken a CompTIA exam before is they are not all multiple choice. This is great to have multiple choice because there's a question and then there's 4 or 5 answers to choose from. So you still have a chance of getting this question right, even if you don't know what it is. So this is not the case with the first handful of questions on the exam, however. You will get a set of questions right at the beginning of the exam that CompTIA calls performance-based questions. These performance-based questions are any other type of question than multiple choice. They might be a drag and drop question. It might be a matching question. It might be one where you have to put things in a particular order. It might be a question you have to perform a function at the Windows desktop. You just never know exactly what it is going to be. But it will always be a topic that comes directly from your exam objectives. So this won't be something that you don't recognize. It's just not being asked of you in a way that's a multiple choice question. So I have one for you today. I have a performance-based question to start us off. This is a performance-based question that is a matching question. And unlike the one we did 2 days ago, this is a one-to-one match, which might help you a little bit as you go through this with your one-to-one matching. This might help the Q&A process. Here is your performance-based question of the month. And I apologize, it looks weird online. If you look at this online, it looked fine when I looked at it online earlier, but you'll notice it looks weird when you see it in your app or when you're answering online. So just look at the screen and we'll step through each one of these. We have a question that asks, match the description to the most applicable scripting language. And we have 5 descriptions and 5 scripting languages. So it's a one-to-one match. So that makes it a little bit easier anyway. The first description is disable a group of Active Directory accounts. The second is modify a web page based on the client device. The third is modify formulas in a group of spreadsheets. The fourth is add a new security policy to a firewall. And the fifth is perform a periodic backup of a Linux web server. And the 5 different scripting languages you might use to do this are Python, VB scripting, Shell script, PowerShell, and JavaScript. So there's 5 different scripting languages. Now, if you think these are exactly the way they should be, then you would choose 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, and submit that one. They are not in that order, of course. So for those of you listening on the podcast side, let me give you the 5 scripts and the descriptions again. The 5 scripting languages are Python, VB scripting, Shell script, PowerShell, and JavaScript. The first description is disable a group of Active Directory accounts. The second is modify a web page based on the client device. The third is modify formulas in a group of spreadsheets. The fourth is add a new security policy to a firewall. And the fifth is perform a periodic backup of a Linux web server. So this is one where if you aren't quite sure, at least on this one, you could probably guess and put as many together as you think fit. And this may be the case where if one doesn't seem to work out and sync up the way you think it should, you can start moving some things around. But nothing will be left over at the end. Sometimes I'll give you matching questions where some things are left over, which you commonly see on the exam, by the way, because it makes it harder. But in this particular case, I wanted to make it just about as hard as it is already. I did not need to make it harder than this because this is all new types of content for the 1002 exam. And this may be a case where you do have to figure out which one fits the best. You know, knowing the definition of a topic or the definition of a word or an acronym is not enough for the CompTIA exam. You need to really understand how that works. Yeah, and the software, it looks kind of funny. So this is how it looks. This is probably how it looks on your screen. When I looked at it earlier today in the editor, it looked great, but it kind of stuck it all together. And that's probably due to a method. I'm creating things offline. I'm importing them into the system now. And I now need to go back in and put in these different, at least line breaks would be good. We'll have to see. So if it doesn't look bad on your app, that's great. On mine, it doesn't look that great. So that's why we're going to keep it on this screen so we can see what's there. And well, the advantage here is you're not going to see that screen on the other side anyway because it's fill in the blank and we don't go back to that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll figure it out as we go through all of this. A lot of you are locking in your answers. A lot of you are not locking in your answers on this one. So this may be one of those situations where we really have to parse out what these happen to be, which is an important consideration if you are ever in a situation where you are trying to figure out what to do next with this. Don't spend a lot of time. Be very observant of the clock that's in the upper right-hand corner and make sure that you are getting rid of things very quickly. You only have a certain amount of time. There's only 90 minutes to be able to do that. So this is one of those challenges. Let's break this one down and see how you did with this question. Let's start with the very first description, which is disable a group of Active Directory accounts. What scripting language would you put for Active Directory? The best one in this list of those 5, and the one that really does fit quite well, PowerShell. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean we couldn't use one of the other scripting languages to do this. You could probably do this with a little bit more work in Python. But because we're talking specifically in this question about the most applicable scripting language, we need to find the one that's able to perform this function with the least amount of extra work. And PowerShell is specifically designed to handle these Windows-specific type of problems, because Active Directory, that's Windows-specific. So this is a scripting language that is able to control and manage all of the internals of the Windows operating system, a capability that is not necessarily available in other scripting languages. So to our first answer to disable a group of Active Directory accounts is D, PowerShell. The next one is modify a web page based on the client device. Well, if you need a scripting language that modifies what someone is seeing on a web page, you're probably going to be using JavaScript. The answer is E, JavaScript. And that is the one that you would use in a browser to manipulate or modify what people are seeing in their browser. If you're on the Professor Messer website, there's JavaScript. If you go to Google, there's JavaScript. If you go to Facebook, there's JavaScript. We use it everywhere. Not to be confused with Java, which is a programming language, not a scripting language. And of course, Java and JavaScript, horrible that they have that name in common, but they are two completely different animals. So do not ever get them confused with each other. Third on our list, modify formulas in a group of spreadsheets. Well, if we're doing some type of changing to a spreadsheet, a word processing document, or something in Microsoft Office, or even in Windows in general, then you would probably do that in VB scripting. That is an easy one to work through. The VB scripting commonly used in Office. It's a fantastic scripting language if you're using Office or trying to do things in the Windows environment. Works very nice to have that there. VB scripting is the answer for modifying formulas in a group of spreadsheets. Fourth on our list, add a new security policy to a firewall. Well, one of those programming languages that tends to interoperate and integrate with a lot of different infrastructure devices, including cloud-based systems, cloud-based orchestration, firewalls, routers, switches. You would use Python. Python is a fantastic scripting language to do this. It's probably the most applicable given this list that you had available. And it's the one that I would choose too. If I had to automate a process on a firewall today, I'd use Python for that. There's plenty of libraries to be able to use that. And it's custom designed for this. It's really a very, very flexible and powerful scripting language. Of course, you would use that for this. And last on our list, perform a periodic backup of a Linux web server. Well, at the core of Linux devices is that terminal. And from the terminal, we would run shell scripts. That terminal is a shell in Linux, and running a script in that shell is a shell script. That's where that name comes from. And the shell script is one where you would set up Linux-based functions to be able to operate. In fact, performing a periodic backup of a Linux web server is something I do now on my web server using a shell script. Because it's quick, it's easy, it's built into the operating system. You don't need to load anything extra. You don't need to install Python. You don't need to do anything else. It's already part of the operating system and what you're doing. So very quickly going through this, disabling a group of Active Directory accounts is PowerShell. Modifying a web page based on the client device is JavaScript. Modifying formulas in a group of spreadsheets is VB scripting. Adding a new security policy to a firewall is Python, and performing a periodic backup of a Linux web server is a shell script. Some of you have asked in the chat room, well, I got some of these right and I got some of these wrong. Do I get partial credit? And CompTIA has said in a frequently asked questions file on their website, maybe or maybe not. They will not tell you when they give you partial credit. It seems like a question like this would lend itself to be partial credit, so I want to think that this one would. But CompTIA said, well, that's not necessarily the case. We might not give you partial credits. Up to us, and we're not telling you. So at least they tell us it's possible, that there is a chance you could get partial credit. So we're going to pretend that you did. So you can grade yourself accordingly as we step through the rest of it. That's your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you learned something about scripting you didn't know already. If any of these come up on your actual exam, that might help you as well. Let's do another question. We're back to multiple choice questions. That should feel better already. This multiple choice question asks, which of these EU regulations allows users to control their personal data? Would that be HIPAA, GDPR, DRM, PCI DSS, or EULA? Which of these EU regulations allows users to control their personal data? Is it HIPAA, GDPR, DRM, PCI DSS, or EULA? You have to figure out which one of those makes sense for EU and their personal data. If you think you know the answer, use that link at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer to be able to use this. Hopefully you'll know. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're sitting there on the exam with no help whatsoever, and you're not going to be there when I take my exam. Unfortunately, chat room. I wish you were. That would be pretty awesome if you were, but you're not. So that's not something we'll be able to step through. We're going to have to do this on our own. We don't have a choice. So see if you happen to know what that is as you go through it. As I was going through all of these questions, I stepped through each domain one at a time. So we're going to get a smattering across multiple domains as we do this today, for those of you asking about that, and being able to work through all the details of it as well. This is one that you should also be aware of because it comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So that's another good reason, probably more than any other, why you should absolutely be familiar with this particular question. All of the topics that are in the answers, by the way, are real things. I didn't make any of those up. So I guess that's my hint to you, is all 5 of those answers are actual things for whatever help that might give you. Let's see how you did with this one. The question was, which of these EU regulations allows users to control their personal data? Is it a HIPAA? Is it GDPR? Is it DRM? Is it PCI DSS? Or is it EULA? Let's have the results and see how this looks. 59% of you say that it is GDPR, and you have a pretty good majority there. That's a pretty strong majority, although 26% of you, over a quarter of you, say EULA is what that is, because it's an EU regulation. Duh, EULA. That makes sense to me. I'm going with that. 10% of you said HIPAA. We've got 3% that said PCI DSS and 2% said DRM. You know, I didn't realize when I wrote this that EULA in EU regulations actually had the EU at the beginning. It was not my intention to have that be the case, but it just sort of worked out that way when we worked through the differences of that. So maybe that I can see why people would want to choose that. However, it's not EULA. It is what the 58% of you said, the GDPR. This is your European regulation for general data protection. This is what some people have described as the right to be forgotten, although that is not exactly how this particular regulation turned out. But it is an extremely useful function to have this at least in a place where you can control some of your data. And I think that's really nice to have that, to be able to control some of your data. You get to tell website themselves, please delete all of this information. Please delete all of my details. And at least in the EU, the European Union, they have to do that. So that's one of those situations where outside of the European Union, we are told that we have to abide by these international or very EU-centric standards, but the reality is we really don't here in the United States. We're a little bit upstart. Europe especially can't tell us what to do in the U.S. So it's just one of those cultural things. Like, oh, you're not going to tell us what to. We will help. We'll go along with it to a point, as far as that's concerned. And I do go along with with this to a point. If someone was to send me an email that said, hey, could you delete my stuff? I delete it, assuming there's no other reason. Sometimes there is information where people have purchased something. Well, my IRS here, the Internal Revenue Service in the United States, requires I keep information on my finances a certain amount of time. After that point, I can delete. But if you didn't buy anything, there's no financial data to keep, I delete it right away. So I get it. And I think that's just being a nice person, I think, right? Why would you not delete someone's personal data if they didn't want the personal data there? So, of course, we need a regulation to require that we delete it, and that is the regulation GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And if you did answer that one, if you answered B, GDPR, you got that one absolutely right. Now, HIPAA is, if you're ever in a case where you have to deal with medical information, then the HIPAA regulations would apply. Healthcare is an incredibly important concern. And of course, your healthcare information should stay private, and HIPAA are the regulations here in the US that manage and control that. EULA is the End User License Agreement. Has nothing to do with the European Union. It describes the license that you agree to. You know that big, long bunch of text that you never read and you scroll through and you click I agree at the bottom? That's the EULA. That's the thing. The thing you've never read before is the EULA. It should have something in there about things you never read. That answer would be EULA. DRM, digital rights management, is a way to control what you see on your screen or what you hear or see with your eyes. Hear with your ears, see with your eyes. PCI DSS is the payment card industry standard for protecting your credit card data as it's on the network and stored. So that's the one that makes sense for credit cards, but has nothing to do with the European Union and personal data. The only one on this list that does apply to that is answer B, the GDPR. 60% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another multiple choice question. We're so angry about the EULA thing. That was not my intention to do that. It just sort of happened. Maybe it was. Maybe in the back of my mind, the intention was. I don't think that's the case. Let's do another question that asks, here it is, a desktop technician needs to confirm the version and edition of a Windows 10 desktop. Which of the following control panel applets would be the best choice for this task? Would it be user accounts, system, device manager, performance settings, or programs and features? A desktop technician needs to confirm the version and edition of a Windows 10 desktop. Which of the following control panel applets would be the best choice for this task? Would it be user accounts, system, device manager, performance settings, or programs and features? If you think you know the answer, follow that link at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. That will get you there. It might be useful to have that. You know, GDPR, and the chat room's even still talking about the idea of protecting your own data, because we're trying to figure out in the US the best way to implement this. We don't have quite the same system the European Union does to be able to manage these laws, and data is everywhere. The data that you are looking at on the Professor Messer website, even though I am a Florida company, that data is primarily in Texas. And if you are looking at that data from California, how do those laws all apply? So you can see how that becomes a little more complicated. This isn't brick and mortar. You're not going to a facility. Your data is not in a building somewhere, and that's it. And then you get into situations like this where you're answering questions online right now. If you're here live, where is that information being stored? Even though I'm not asking you for names and that information, this particular product does allow me to ask you that information. So where's that information stored? It may not be in Texas, may not be in Florida, may not be in California. And is it even in the United States? Is it in Canada? Is it in Europe? Where is it? So that's the challenge, is figuring out the details of this. Maybe this would be one as you are stepping through your understanding of how to manage data, especially if you go into the database side of things with your IT job. That's just one of the things you'll have to deal with. Let's see how you did with this one. A desktop technician needs to confirm the version and edition of a Windows 10 desktop. This is, by the way, always a good idea. If you're sitting down to a machine you've never sat down to before, what am I working with here? I need to know what version and edition of Windows 10 this is. Which of the following control panel applets would be the best choice for this task? Would it be user accounts, system, device manager, performance settings, or programs and features. We'll have to step through and figure this out, won't we? Let's see how you did for figuring it out. 95% of you said system. That is a strong majority. That's a practical 100% practically. System, 95%. Did we all choose the right one? We have 3% that chose programs and features, 2% that said device manager, 1% performance settings, and nobody said user accounts. And of course, it's user accounts. It's not user accounts. Of course, it's system. That's what you would choose, is system. The 95% of you got this one absolutely right, because everything you need to know about the system's right here. That's exactly where it would be. And you can even see in here, we can see it's Windows 10 Enterprise. This happens to be an evaluation of Windows 10 Enterprise. You can see the processor on the system, how much memory, the system type, a lot of details here as we're stepping through all of this. I can break this even from here. I can click on information to view advanced system settings, so I can view performance information and get the information about the virtual memory. I can look at system protection settings. It is a great view to be able to see this. And in fact, this is kind of the old school system view. As some of you have seen in Windows 10, Microsoft is slowly getting rid of the old screens and kind of replacing them with the new Windows 10 screens. This one is still here, though. This one is still available and something we can look at. So at least we can enjoy it for the moment. The system screen is what we were looking for. This is the right answer. 95% of you knew that. Was it a gimme? I think this one sort of was. But of course, like anything else in the exam objectives, this is information that you need to know. You should also go through this list, and if you know what user accounts does for you, device manager, performance settings, and programs and features, you should step through each one of those applets and be familiar with them. The user accounts has the user data in it, be able to set passwords, be able to set pictures for a user, add a new user, remove a user. Device Manager allows us to manage the hardware in our system and the device drivers associated with that hardware. Performance settings are useful to be able to change things like virtual memory and other visual type cues on the screen. And programs and features, there's a lot in there, but we often consider that the place you go to install, or more importantly, uninstall certain applications in programs and features. You can also add and remove Windows features from there as well. The answer here, though, system, is what's going to give you the right answer. Let's do another one. See if this one might not be so much of a gimme for everybody. The question asks, a user has modified their MAC address to gain access to a wireless network. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Would it be social engineering, spoofing, zero-day, brute force, or denial of service? A user has modified their MAC address to gain access to a wireless network. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Would it be social engineering, spoofing, zero-day, brute force, or denial of service? If you think you know the answer, you can lock it in by going to professormesser.com/QA. It's right there on the screen. And lock in your answer. As we've mentioned earlier, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We see those don't stick around very long anyway, even if you were to do that. So that's one of those where we want to be able to put the answer in without any type of feedback, because that's what you get on the actual exam. No feedback. If you're taking it at home, you can't even put your hand in front of your face. You can't do this. Let me think about that. What is... A user has modified their MAC. You will get a message on the screen immediately that says you cannot move your hand. Don't put your hand in front of your mouth, and you cannot talk during the exam if you're taking it at home. Really can't do either one of those things in a testing center either, but they're just not sitting in front of you the whole time. They're also looking at you on a camera, and very rarely do they throw that out. You shouldn't be talking in a testing center anyway, because there's other people in the room trying to take their exam. Why are you talking? But that's one that if you were online, they don't want you talking or saying anything. They certainly don't want you saying the questions and answers out loud for this. Now, you can't use any hand signs. You can't, no, you can't. Not how that works. But they are very strict online to do this. Most of them are very, very strict. So very close. Yeah, you can't even mouth it, like to pretend that a user has modified their MAC address. You can't do that. Nope, not going to work. To be able to make that happen. So don't do that either. Let's see how you did with this one. I'm not as strict with you, except in the chat room. That's the only place where I'm strict. You can talk out loud when you're watching this because I can't hear you. A user has modified their MAC address to gain access to a wireless network. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Would it be social engineering, spoofing, zero-day, brute force, or denial of service? 83% of us, not quite as strong as the last one, but I think that's still pretty strong, is spoofing. We have 9% that said brute force, almost double digits. 6% said social engineering, 2% said denial of service, and 1% said zero-day. Changing your MAC address is not something you can do on everybody's machine. Not all drivers will allow you to do this, but you can certainly do this on many machines. I think many drivers allow you to do this. Mini driver? No. Many drivers allow you to do this. And it goes to the device configuration of the network card, and you're able to change the MAC address to whatever you would like it to be. On my cable modem, I can change the MAC address. Sometimes you do have some cable providers and wide area network providers that require your MAC address be a particular MAC address, and you have to administratively put the MAC address in there. It's one of the ways that they manage where you are and configure the settings for your machine, and being able to have that there. There might be, as I mentioned, a completely legitimate reason to do this. The one I just mentioned is a very good example of that. But of course, if somebody's trying to get around an access control list or some type of security, then they may change their MAC address to be a little bit different than what it is, or to try to match what somebody else has configured. Well, that's a significant way to get around. That's a significant security concern. And when you're doing that, you are spoofing or duplicating a MAC address that exists somewhere else. That's what the term spoofing is referring to. Spoofing is a term we use very generically. If somebody was to send an email with your email, it looks like it came from your email address but was really sent by someone else, they're spoofing your email address. So in this case, we are spoofing a MAC address, perhaps to get around a MAC address filter, which is, as I mentioned in my videos, if you are setting up a filter on your wireless access point and that MAC, you put a MAC address filter in, this is an easy way to circumvent that filter. You simply change your MAC address to be something that that particular access point allows. This is not something that is a very good way to manage access points, as this particular question really demonstrates. 8% of you said brute force. Brute force means you're trying something or an iteration of things over and over and over and over again until you find the right combination of things. That doesn't necessarily describe someone modifying a MAC address. You also have 6% of you that said social engineering. This is where you're doing something other than technology to gain access or gain information. Here we're dealing with technology. We're changing a MAC address. That's not really social engineering. We have 1% of you that said zero-day. Zero-day is a type of exploit that has not been patched. Nobody even knew it was there until suddenly it appeared. And now people are taking advantage of this. If you're a system administrator, you're probably not on this live stream because you're patching your Exchange servers right now due to a zero-day that came out yesterday. This happens all the time. So this particular question, though, does not describe a zero-day exploit. This describes something that's built into everyone's drivers and changing MAC addresses. And denial of service means that you're creating a situation where nobody's able to access that particular service. That's not what changing a MAC address does. So that's one where you do have to know this. These are topics, as you're mentioning in the chat room, they are security plus topics. These are also network plus topics. These are also A plus topics. Security is not specific to security. Everybody has a responsibility for security, and this is a good example of how that responsibility applies across the board for sure. This is, we've got other questions in here to go through. I've got another one here. Let me pop this up in just a moment and be able, yes, here's the question that I have for you. This next question, multiple choice question, asks, a system administrator suspects that malware may be installed on a user's workstation. Which of the following would be the best next step in the malware removal process? Would it be to disable system restore? Would it be to educate the end user? Would it be to boot into safe mode? Would it be to quarantine the infected system? Or would it be to update the anti-malware signatures? The question again, a system administrator suspects that malware may be installed on a user's workstation. Which of the following would be the best next step in the malware removal process? Was that disable system restore, educate the end user, boot into safe mode, quarantine the infected system, or update the anti-malware signatures? Those are your possible answers. You should choose which one you think that happens to be. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's your link at the bottom, and lock it in and see if you happen to know what those are. Yeah, some of you are mentioning, continuing that conversation about taking your exam at home. Once you start the exam, you cannot leave. They are watching you. They are listening to you. You can't leave the room. The instant you leave, they fail you, and you don't get your money back. You don't get another try. So once you sit down, you're there. So that's what's pretty important, that you are in a good place to take this exam, that you can sit down for 90 minutes in a room and not get up. Sometimes that's challenging. So you have to really prepare yourself for that particular contingency. So I think that's one where you might want to think about that as you go through this. See if you can you take the exam in a bathroom? Technically, people have taken their exam in their bath, not in active use of their bathroom, but it's the only room in their house they were able to get into. They can close the door, they can lock it, and no one else can come in. Well, or want to during that time frame. If you're in like an apartment, that may be the only room you have that has a door on it. You know, I had a small 2-room apartment, and it was just an opening between sort of the living area and the bedroom. There was no closed-in room, and sometimes the people who are monitoring this want you to be in a closed-in room. So they'd always have you take pictures of the facility, of the place you're in, and then they will tell you, well, this is going to work or this is not going to work. So you'll know what to do in those situations. Let's see how you did with this question. Well, the question again is, a system administrator suspects that malware may be installed on a user's workstation. Which of the following would be the best next step in the malware removal process? Is that disable system restore, educate the end user, boot into safe mode, quarantine the infected system, or update the anti-malware signatures? 74% of us, 73% of us say we quarantine the infected system. 11% of you said disable system restore. It's kind of a tie with 12% that said boot into safe mode. 4% said update the anti-malware signatures, and 0% said educate the end user, as if it's not even your responsibility. What, you don't want to talk to them? Why would you not say that? 73% said quarantine the infected system, and that is the right answer. You need to quarantine that system. You've already looked at the system and you suspect that there's malware. It may be that you actually see something on the screen that really makes you think, oh, you're totally infected with malware. Or this might be one of those situations where this could go either way, but I have a feeling, based on some of the things that I am seeing and the slowdowns and the fact that I'm seeing these weird executables that are running in your process list, I think you're infected with malware. Now what do we do? Well, the first thing is make sure the system can't infect someone else. And you remove its connection to the network. You disconnect any storage devices. You prevent the malware from spreading. That's the goal with doing this. You don't want to take backups at this point because it's too late. You're already infected. Now's the point where you have to begin the rest of the malware removal process if that's something you need to do. Now, you've got other options here. Each one of the options that's provided here is part of the malware removal process. But I asked you the best next step. And as soon as you recognize that malware might be there, the first thing you should be doing is making sure it can't infect someone else. Quarantine is the very first thing you do after identifying malware or suspecting that there may be malware on the network. Now we have other options here. For example, 11% of you said disable system restore. And in fact, after making sure that this system is off the network, that's going to be the next thing you do, is disabling system restore, because not only are they infecting the current working environment, they probably also infected your restoration points. So you need to delete all of those. And the easiest way to delete them is to disable system restore. You would not disable system restore first. While you're busy disabling system restore, it's possible the system could end up infecting something else. So that's why you always quarantine first. 12% of you said boot into safe mode. And in fact, during the process of removing this malware from the system, you may use safe mode to do that. But that's later on down the line. Once you finally disabled system restore, you've made sure you've got updated signatures. Now you can go through and start removing things. We have 4% of you that said update the anti-malware signatures, and you will want to update those signatures if they're not updated already, but you don't do that first. You do that after the system is safe. So make sure nothing can talk to this system. Make sure this system can't talk to anyone else. That's the important part. So that's why none of these other things matter until that system is quarantined. And educating the end user is the last thing you do. Once you get through all of this, and you fixed everything and it's backed up to where it should be, you can tell the user, here's how we can avoid this in the future. And then hopefully they've heard you and are able to work through that. The best answer here, the best next step, the one that is the right answer, is answer D, quarantining the infected system. That's the one that you would want to use in this particular process. There's an entire malware removal process in the exam objectives, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, etc. So section 3.3 of the 220-1002 is exactly where you should go for that. There's plenty to know about that, and you'll, of course, be familiar with this as we go through it. Well, you can see already we've dealt with a lot of different topics and just a few questions that we've done already today. The 220-1002 exam has so many different topics on it. It is a very, very broad exam, expecting you to know quite a number of different things. And one of the problems that I found is that a lot of the study materials for questions and answers that I've seen on the internet, and perhaps even some that I've seen that you pay for, have not really been up to what I consider to be a good set of questions. Some of them are actually pretty bad. I get questions and people sending me emails all the time saying, I saw this question on their site, I think it's wrong. What do you think? And I don't even have to read it. Of course it's wrong. There's just so much bad questions that you'll find on the internet, and they just weren't put together very well. And so I thought there's a need for people to have study materials that really focus on quality, that focus on the topics that you really should be learning that are specific to your exam objectives, and questions that are written in a way that have the same feel as what you're going to get on the exam. Because I have a number of people walking into their exam saying, boy, the way they word these questions, I was not ready for. And I thought, well, that's probably true because there's not much out there you can read that will prepare you for this. So I wrote my own book of practice exams. There are 3 sets of practice exams, 90 questions each, 5 performance-based questions in each one of these. And here's what it looks like. Here is a screen from my practice exam book. Let's do a question. Here's a question I have saying, George, a sales manager, has recently replaced a broken mobile phone with a newer version. After receiving the new phone, he restored all of his apps and data from a recent backup. However, when he attempts to download any new email messages, he receives the message, unable to decrypt email. Which of the following steps should a technician follow to resolve this issue? Should they A, install the latest operating system patches? Should they B, delete the email app and reinstall? Should they C, restart the phone? Or should they D, install the user's private keys? Now, this is a PDF. And working through the PDF, it's if you buy the physical book, here's what the physical book looks like. If you bought the physical book, you would flip back to page 47 in the answer key to see what's going on. But in the PDF, I put a link right in the PDF. So you just click right over here where it says the details, and it moves you to page 47, where it gives you the question and the answers, and then I tell you what the answer is. And with every single question, I explain to you why the answer I chose is the right answer. So you'll know why this particular answer is the right one. My problem, though, is I never get the right answer. I always get the wrong answer. And these other study materials, for some reason, never tell you why the wrong answer is the wrong answer. And I think that's a great learning opportunity. So for every wrong answer, I explain why the answer is the incorrect answer. Every single time with every question. I think this is an important part of the learning process. And in fact, if you got this one right, I highly recommend you go through and read the wrong answers, because the topics of the questions on the exam you get might be from the wrong answers. And knowing the perspective of these answers could actually get a question right for you on your exam. I also put at the very bottom a QR code. In fact, if you have your phone handy, you can pop open your camera, just point your camera at the screen. You don't have to take a picture, but you point your camera at the screen or point your camera at the actual printed book, and it will take you to the video that describes the topic in this particular question. Or you can simply click on that link in the PDF and it will go to my website and bring up the video specific to that particular topic. So all of that is in my practice exams book. If you'd like more information on that, you can find it on my website, professormesser.com/core2pe. This is also a great way to support the site. People say all the time, can we donate? Can we give you a donation? I don't generally take donations. We've started doing some things along those lines, but I like to give you something for your money, and you can either buy this individually. If you'd like a little bit of a break, you can combine it with my course notes on my website, and you get a little bit of a discounted price. So you can buy both my course notes and my practice exams all in one place and get a little bit of money saved at the same time. That might help you as well. Something to consider. And for those of you that have purchases, thank you so much for your support. It really does go a long way to keeping this whole thing going. We're able to do more live streams. We're able to create more content thanks to your support. We really do appreciate it. Speaking of more content, let's do another question. I have another multiple choice based question that asks, which of the following remote access technologies would be considered least secure? Would that be RDP, SSH, Telnet, IPsec, or VNC? Which of the following remote access technologies would be considered least secure? Is that RDP, SSH, Telnet, IPsec, or VNC? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Be able to figure out what these happen to be. Even though you know it, lock in your answer there. If you know it, lock it in. You'll be able to figure out what it happens to be. This is one where if you ever go through the idea of remote access is a big answer, big section on the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with that and have that there. From the chat room, could you do more content for Cisco and Palo Alto or something like that? We'll talk a little bit about that in the after show. I certainly am incredibly familiar with Palo Alto, intimately familiar with Palo Alto, and quite a bit familiar with Cisco as well. I'd love to do both of those if I could make sure that people would watch them. That would be good to know. Which of the following remote access technologies would be considered least secure? Everybody jumped on this one. So let's see if everybody got this one right. Is it RDP, SSH, Telnet, IPsec, or VNC? 88% said Telnet. I feel like I'm doing some gimmies today. We need to make one a little bit harder for this list. Telnet is a good one. Telnet is one that's been around forever. In fact, there may be times, and in fact, all of you, of course, should have Telnet on your system, primarily because it's a very useful troubleshooting tool. You would not use Telnet, though, for its intended purpose of being able to send and receive information from a terminal screen across the network. And that's because it's a fantastic way to view the console. However, all the communication between your machine and that service is in the clear. It is not encrypted. It is wide open for anybody to see. If anybody is plugged in and is capturing these packets, they will see your username. They will see your password. They'll see anything you transfer back and forth. They can easily rebuild the screen. They can see exactly what you're doing. That's not what you want. So Telnet is useful for really some minor troubleshooting tasks these days. It should never be used for terminal communications and seeing what's happening on a console, unless, sometimes if you work in a very large environment, there's going to be this one device in the data center in the back corner that nobody's rebooted in 7 years, that nobody wants to touch, that only communicates with Telnet. You may have to go to the room that it's in to make sure that your communication is not intercepted. But that's one of those cases where you really do need to be familiar with what is secure and what is not secure. And Telnet, absolutely not secure. That's one you need to think about. So Telnet was the right answer here. Remote desktop protocol, by default these days, is all encrypted communication. You've got SSH is sort of the Telnet version in a form that is secure. So SSH is what you should be using. Secure Shell. It's in the name, Secure Shell, to be able to have this here. Secure Shell is exactly what you should be using instead of Telnet. That is the right answer if you wanted a really secure way to do terminal communication. IPsec, of course, is a way to set up secure tunnels. In fact, if you're doing VPN these days, then of course you're probably using IPsec or a type of SSL type encryption. And then VNC is very similar to remote desktop, although it's for operating systems that might be one other than Microsoft related. VNC by default has encryption functionality turned on, and it's one that is pretty secure when you set it up that way. Telnet, however, you don't have the option. Definitely not a very secure technology to be able to use. 88% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, and if you don't know what that is, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you are collecting CEUs, you can go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a contact link there. Click that contact link and it will have a form there where you can put in your name, your email address, and the subject line. Put that this is the March 2021 Core 2 study group. And you'll want on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of, what should we use? Telnet. We'll use Telnet. So that is one where we absolutely want to be able to understand what we are typing in, because I will evaluate these to make sure that you are familiar with these or you put the right thing in. So it's the contact link, name, email, Core 2, March 20, just combination of Core 2 and March 2021 in there. And then put the super secret code word of Telnet. You can also put anything else you would like in there right underneath that. I read through every single one of these. I'm really not able to respond back to every single one of these, but I do read through every single one. And I appreciate your comments. I do like reading through them, and I appreciate that. It's something fun to do as I'm going through and processing all of these. It takes me about a week to turn these around, although for those of you who were here Tuesday, you've already got yours today. Went out yesterday. I was really quick with those. Maybe I'll do the same thing with these because I like that, getting them off my email list, get them out of the queue. You can, of course, do that. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, the Contact Us link, fill that in, send it to me, and we'll be able to do that. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's get one more question in before we're not done, because I wanted to kind of at least give you one we can think about. Let's see how we do with this question that asks, a client computer is not able to properly resolve an IP address. Which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? Would it be NSLOOKUP, netstat, traceroute, or ping? A client computer is not able to properly resolve an IP address. Which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? Would it be NSLOOKUP, netstat, traceroute, or ping? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA right there at the bottom of your screen and lock in your answer. Maybe you know what this one is. Maybe you've had to deal with this problem before. These 4 options, one's more like a question from the exam. There's only 4 options available. There's not 5 options on this one. So see if you happen to know what it is on this issue of not being able to properly resolve an IP address. It's the problem it always is, of course. So that's the only hint I'll give. Maybe that will help. Probably won't, to have that functionality. Why did I put the wrong thing? I put the wrong answer down on my slides, by the way. I'll show you this in a moment. I got a completely wrong slide after this. Like, that's not the answer. That's not the one you should use. Yeah, that's exactly what I put in. I got it wrong. So it really doesn't matter what you do on this question. I got this one wrong. That doesn't, I want to say that, I almost said that doesn't happen very often, and then I stopped myself because I know that's not true. Let's see how you did. A client computer is not able to properly resolve an IP address. Which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? Is it NSLOOKUP, netstat, traceroute, or ping? Oh, we aren't sure. Oh, we ended on a good one, didn't we? I don't want it to sound that way. I'm not trying to have it so that you get these wrong, but if we all know what the answer is, this doesn't help you very much. I guess that's where I'm coming from with that. 37% of you said NSLOOKUP. 28% of you said ping. 20% of you said traceroute. 14% said netstat. And would you believe I said netstat? Not the right answer. I put the wrong slide in. That's not right at all. The correct answer is answer A, NSLOOKUP. 36% of you, it's not the majority, but it is the plurality of you did get the right answer. So NSLOOKUP is the right answer. It is not netstat. It's name service lookup. We have to kind of go back to the actual problem we had, which was the client computer not able to resolve an IP address. This is the process where we are asking a domain name server, domain name service server, a DNS server. We're giving it a name. We're giving it www.professormesser.com. And we want to get an IP address back. But for some reason, that is called the resolution process. We're not able to resolve the IP address there. And because of that, we need to now check, is the communication I have to that name server working properly? Am I able to resolve anything? What is going on? We would use the NSLOOKUP utility, or for those of you that have the newer flavor of lookup applications, you may be using dig to be able to use this. But those are the two you would use to be able to check to see, am I able to do name resolution properly? Now, all of these will help you during a troubleshooting, of course. There will be probably a ping and a traceroute and a netstat and other things happening while you're trying to troubleshoot this problem. But of course, the question asked very specifically, which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting an issue associated with resolving an IP address? And if you looked at all these, netstat's a great tool for being able to look at statistics on the network, as this slide plainly shows you, that I happen to have available for you to see. But that has nothing to do with name resolution. So that wouldn't help us very much. Traceroute is great to determine maybe what is the route that you take to get to the name server and back. But that route doesn't help you directly troubleshoot an issue with name resolution. And then ping will tell us if another server happens to be talking on the network. It's up or it's down. But that doesn't help us either. Doesn't help us resolve an IP address. Ping does not resolve anything. It doesn't really help us with the resolution process, or at least understand if it's working or not. The answer here that is the best, the one that directly is associated with the name resolution process, is NSLOOKUP. And yes, you can do a netstat to see if you're communicating to the DNS server. You can do a traceroute to see where the DNS server exists. You could ping the DNS server to see if it's there. None of those things, by the way, determine how well it's resolving an IP address. Just tells you if the machine's there. The one that is the best in this list for troubleshooting this issue is answer A, NSLOOKUP. You have to know what best, what first, what the most. These are common terms used on the exam. And this is another one where you really do need to know what those terms are and what answer would be. Because in this case, we may end up using all four of these utilities to troubleshoot our problem. But it didn't ask you, what would you do? What tool would you use to troubleshoot the problem? It said, which would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? That's the real difference. And that's why we really needed to break this down into its smaller pieces. The answer A, NSLOOKUP, You guys got that one right. 37% of you got that one right. All the questions today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. You should get these objectives if you don't have them already. They are free. They are extensive. They tell you everything you need to know for the exam. They should be the first thing you download. They should be the last thing you reference before taking your exam because they're a great checklist of everything you need to know. So make sure you go to professormesser.com/objectives and follow the link from there, or go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you right to the page. You'll find out where it is. In the chat room, some of you have been saying, when do you do these study groups? Is there a Security Plus study group this month? When is the next A Plus study group? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. There's a calendar on my website. You can find it, professormesser.com/calendar. That will tell you exactly when the next event is going to be. We have a Network Plus and Security Plus study group later this month. There's a couple of weeks gap, and then we pick it up again. In April, we have a Plus study group on the 6th and the 8th, Network Plus on the 14th, and Security Plus on the 21st of April. So they're always, the calendar is always there for you to reference. There may be times when these dates will change. So that's the nature of my life, is occasionally I have to change the date of a live stream. And what I tell you today may be completely different a month from now. So make sure you keep checking back on the calendar. I always update the calendar. If I ever make a change, the first thing I do is update the calendar. So as soon as that update is made, you know immediately from the calendar. There's also a link to my Google Calendar on that same page, and you can link to that because I also update my Google Calendar, which means it would simply update in your Google Calendar as well. That can be very useful to have that there. Also want to make you aware, we mentioned these course notes earlier in the show, in the study group, where I have a set of notes that are all of the notes from my course. I took every video and I made a set of notes from them. They are available in a digital PDF. This is them. They're big. The Core 2 course notes are how many pages? 50 pages. So there's a lot in here in the course notes, but every single bit of text, all the important graphics, all the important charts from my videos, they're all in there. So instead of watching hundreds of videos, you can simply get the course notes. Now everything's there. You can now don't concentrate on making notes. Instead, concentrate on knowing what this information is that's in your notes. A different perspective. And again, you can combine this with the practice exams, and the price is a little bit lower when you combine those things. A little bit of a price catch there. Another great way to support the site, you can find out more at professormesser.com/1000notes. Well, an hour has passed by already. I can't believe it. But we're not done. There's an after show. I've been asking you all the questions. How about you ask me some questions? We're going to open up phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll talk about how I would create other products and why, other training courses and why. I can kind of give you a perspective of that. Don't forget about the Success Bundle at professormesser.com/1002success. And of course, we've got our daily pop quiz questions on Twitter and Instagram. You can find them all at professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. And if you want to know when the best and when the first time is that I put out one of our new videos, you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell. And if you like this today, if you really enjoyed doing the Q&A, because I sure did, hit that like button, that thumbs up button on the video. That is also great feedback to me to say, okay, that's something we can do. We should keep doing these things. I always like to get that feedback, and that's an easy way to do it. Thanks for joining us in this first hour. Stick around for the after show, and we'll see you next time on the A Plus Study Group. Let's now get the phone lines up and running. Let me see about this, and then we'll answer some questions from the chat. I've got to move some media around on my screen. There we go. I need to open up my Skype, which I will do. So if you'll bear with me a moment, this takes me a second to call into my own show. Like anything else these days, my phone lines are in the cloud. So not only are you calling in to the phone lines that are in the cloud, I'm calling in to the phone lines that are in the cloud. And so I have to go through that process when we start this thing up. It only takes a minute or two as I call into this. And it says, well, you're welcome for me calling that. Now I have to type in a few things. So we will turn that down. And the lady said,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I sure will. We'll type that in. And if I type it in correctly,
welcome, Professor Messer.
thanks, nice lady. That's so now I am up and running with that, which means that's the wrong button. There we go. Now you can call in if you would like to. Also take questions from the chat room. But if you're someone like me that just likes to talk to someone in person, you can do this by calling toll-free in the United States, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. If you are outside of the continental United States, you can also call in for free by using Skype, because Skype will call a toll-free number and not use any Skype minutes. I'll pick up the tab. Put a +1 at the beginning of this, though, if you're using Skype. +1 855-785-7545. That's the one you should do. So in the chat room, we were talking earlier about a training series on Cisco, a training series on Palo Alto Networks. I have a list. I have a long list of potential next training things to be able to work through that. It is a big list, I assure you. Both of those make sense to me. I've got past Cisco knowledge that I can pull from, certainly in my wheelhouse as a former network administrator. And as a former Palo Alto Network Systems engineer, I have an intimate knowledge of Palo Alto Networks. Going back, gosh, when did I start there? Now over 10 years ago? Gosh, a long time ago. I was the 95th employee. Now they have thousands of employees. But that was a great one to kind of really get into IT security and learn the nuances and understand next generation firewalls from the very beginning of that technology. That's one of those times where you're in right at the beginning of understanding those. So that's one of those situations where it's very, very useful to have that knowledge. But that means there's so many things to do. Cloud-based computing is hot. The certifications from Microsoft for Azure, the certifications from Amazon for AWS, those are great. Linux certifications are popular. There's just so many things to do. I have not made a 100% decision on what the next series of things will be, but I'm finishing up the Security Plus right now. It's kind of going to roll into working on Network Plus next, because Network Plus is the one that will probably be released in September of this year. So there will be a new Network Plus at the end of this year. That will keep me busy until that point. And then after that, though, what do we do? What course do we work on next? There will be some new A+ updates coming at the beginning of next year, but sometime in there, it's going to be interesting. But we've not made a complete decision. We have some time to think about that. And of course, I do lots of studying and trying to figure out where things go from there. I have to work through that myself. But your input, because those of you in the chat room, they're saying Cisco CCNA, you're saying Cloud Plus, you're saying OSCP, you're saying, I see all of it. And it may not be one where I'm actually physically making a note, but I am making a note in my brain about, okay, people are asking about this, people are asking about that. Sometimes I'll have somebody ask me about a course nobody's asked in 6 months, and they say, well, what about this one? It's like, probably not. I can tell right off that probably not. If you're the only one asking in 6 months, that would probably not be a great use of my time. But some of these others would be fantastic to have that. It would be really a lot of fun to do a Cisco. It'd be incredibly fun to do Palo Alto Networks. It'd be fun to do a Linux. These are all technologies that I use or have used. So all of those sound like a lot of fun. I just have to figure it out. But we have some time. There's a little bit of a ramp. I think you want me to probably make sure Security Plus and Network Plus are good first. Then we'll worry about the others. Let's go to the phone lines. We will go to the 813 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
John Kemp, Tampa.
Hey, John. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to, I took the Core 2 last month and had something really interesting happening during the performance-based question area.
That sounds interesting.
Well, there was a software glitch on my exam, and it was a problem about disk management, and you had to create, a couple of simple volumes.
So what was
And,
the
when
the bug like? What'd you run into, and were you able to work around it?
No, I was not able to work around it because it said create, a simple volume on disk 1, simple volume on disk 2, label disk 1, disk.
Well, let's not give away too
G.
much of the exam, but what was the type of bug you were running into?
Yeah. But so when I had to right click with my mouse on disk 1 to specify what kind of what I wanted to create there, all the choices were grayed out.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, how can this be? I was like, because I've done this before, and I was like, so then I tried it on the other disk, and same thing again. And I thought, okay, maybe if I go to another problem and come back to this, it'll repair itself.
Right.
Never did.
Oh.
And I kept messing around with that problem, and I told them after the exam what happened. But I mean, basically I ate up all my minutes on that I had. I had 17 minutes to do. I think it was 4 performance-based questions.
That is really frustrating. And it seems to be a problem that is not just with that particular question, but I've seen many reports on the CompTIA subreddit where people have mentioned that things were overlapping on the screen and you couldn't move around windows to see what was underneath them.
Yes, that happened too.
So,
yes.
So
that was going on with the other performance-based question. Yeah. At least I think it was 2 of them that happened. And I was like, "What is going on here? This is just like like there was a bad software coder for those problems."
How dare you blame the software developer, sir? Because that's exactly what it was. It was bad. It was bad programming. This is sort of the first run through that they've had of these. They brought them online. They rushed through as quickly as they could to get them out in April timeframe, which was pretty good. And then after all of that, they still have these tiny little bugs with the performance-based questions, and I'm hoping they will be addressing shortly. And maybe we can find out more about that before the next study group. But as the chat room is asked, perhaps more importantly, how did you do? How was the exam? Did you pass? No, because
I completed none of the. I did great on the multiple choice, and because I spent all my 17 minutes that I had for performance-based questions, which should have been plenty enough.
Right.
No, because I had the overlap thing you were talking about, and then this thing on a problem that I had actually practiced because everybody was saying disk management's going to be on that test, and it was.
Did you happen to contact CompTIA and talk
I
open
said
a
I
ticket?
want a free retake.
Yeah. And
they said, we'll investigate. And they finally, after all this time, I got a letter Friday of last week and said, basically it was kind of like telling me, you need to read the problem more carefully.
That's not appropriate. That's not the problem.
Yeah, that wasn't the issue.
That's frustrating. Just challenging.
I'm just pointing it out because I was like, it happened to me, and I guess is the thing to do if something like that happens to immediately leave the room and go find the person that's working in that office. There is no proctor in our room.
There is no proctor in your room. If you're in a testing center, I have not seen this problem occur in a testing center. In fact, nobody's ever complained about this if it's in a testing center, because obviously the software running in a testing center is slightly different than the software that's running on your own personal workstation, because they're running some additional things on top of that lock down your computer so that when in the middle of the exam, you can't flip back to Windows or flip back to a browser. They enable some capabilities in the operating system that really lock it down. And I think the process of locking down the operating system now locks down some important things that you need to be able to do, like moving around windows on your screen. That's what I think is happening. And they don't have that same kiosk-y lockdown thing in a testing center because that environment is so well controlled. They know what's on those workstations. It's already set up and it's a different type of software. And so nobody really runs into that in a testing center. But at home, a lot of people are complaining about this particular problem at home. It might be worth your while to open up another ticket and say that the answer you got was not acceptable. This wasn't the issue we ran into. The problem is with your software. It's very clear. There's so many people talking about it. I'd run it by them one more time. Please escalate this. That might be the key word. Please move this up the line and have somebody else have a look at it, because this doesn't make any sense. I think at least give that a chance.
I talked to 5 different people there. 5.
But
I did go up the food chain.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
That's frustrating, especially when you know it's not that the problem they think it is not what it is. So is the problem that they're just giving you an answer because that's all they know to do? Or is the problem that they have no idea the problem even exists? Maybe they don't think it's a problem, which I don't think is the case. I think they know there's a problem.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think they're just scared, like, oh, well, if we let this guy have a free retake, oh my gosh, if this gets around on Reddit, everybody will always, if they don't pass, they'll say, I deserve a free retake. Yeah, that's not what I was trying to do at all. I mean, I knew how to do those performance-based questions, and so bottom line is I'll be taking it again, and I think probably like about a week. But,
are you going to take it at home? You're going to take it at a testing center?
Another test center, but it's going to be a place that's an IT school that also has a test center inside of it. The other place was a what's the kind of a bucket shop. I mean, it's very old computers, not the best equipment.
So the problem you ran into was actually in a testing center on what allegedly was a Pearson VUE certified facility.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, great. Maybe they're rolling out the bug to the testing centers now. That's not very reassuring.
That's what I was thinking when you were describing that. I thought, God, maybe they loaded the wrong thing.
Yeah. I wonder.
Or were given the wrong thing to download.
How frustrating. That is not a situation you'd like to see, especially when you know it wasn't your fault. And now it's more than you failed the exam. I think we could all sort of, okay, well, we'll just take it again. This is silly, but we've had to do dumber things in life. So, okay, we'll take the exam again. But you have to pay for it, which is the part that just crushes me. Like, I have to pay for something again that didn't work the first time so that I can hope it works better the second time. Not exactly the optimal of situations. So keep letting, and it may be worth writing a letter to the head of CompTIA to tell him, hey, you know what? Your testing setup just took all my money and I got nothing for this. And you say it's your fault and it clearly isn't. So I'm not happy, but here's what I'm doing. In the meantime, you need to fix this stuff. I wasn't the one that went through it, or I'd write it. I get hyped up with these things. But I think unless we are telling people above the support level, you kind of have to hop the support lines at this point, because this is bigger than the support. It's not a support issue. We really need to fix the problem. So stop trying to fix the symptoms. Let's fix the problem of this. And I don't think the right people are involved at fixing the problem, because it's been going around now for months. They could have fixed it by now.
Oh, you mean you first heard about it?
Oh, yeah.
As far as people taking it at home
in April.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been around almost a year. This problem has been there. So why they've not fixed it is I'm not quite sure. I want to believe because the right people don't know, or the need to fix it has not really been made apparent to someone, because it should have been fixed already.
Sure. Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Well,
I'm
anyway,
sorry you had to go
thank
through that,
for the
John.
great session today, though.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck second time through. Let us know how it goes.
Absolutely.
Take care. I appreciate that. How frustrating, right? Especially when you know the problem was not something you did, and then you explain to someone, here's the situation. Here's exactly what happened. And then you get a message back going, no, it's actually something you did. Like, no, it wasn't. How frustrating. I'm so frustrated for John. Let's shift gears. 207 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. My name's Chuck, and I'm calling from New Hampshire.
Thanks for calling, Chuck. What can we do for you?
Well, it turns out I just took the Core 2 exam myself at home this morning, and the last caller really got my attention because, as it turns out, I had the exact same issue on my exam this morning.
Did I say we were shifting gears? Nope. Exact same problem on this. Did yours manifest itself the same way?
Yeah, it was on the partitioning and formatting the drives question, the exact same one. And for real, fortunately, I passed the exam, so I'm not suffering with the excuse of, oh, it was your dumb.
Right.
But, yeah, so, but I know that had worked, I would have gotten a bit higher score on the exam.
Sure.
It is what it is.
This is sort of why another reason I think maybe they aren't understanding how important this problem is, because if you pass, you're probably not going to complain that you ran into these problems with that. You're just going to keep it moving and you're done and you can kind of get it out of your brain and go to the next thing. But in fact, it's happening to everybody, whether they pass it or fail it. And so maybe they're only getting a subset of the people complaining that this actually happened to. Were you at a testing center or were you at home?
I'm at home.
Okay. So exactly the same situation that John had is also the same situation that you had. Yours just happened to turn out that you're just really, really good at the multiple choice and got enough points with that randomization and number of points per question. It worked out best for you, which is great. And congratulations for that. But it doesn't actually help the problem that poor John had.
Yeah, poor John. I feel bad. I hope, I did escalate it as far as the proctor.
Right.
But it didn't go any further than that. Because like you said, I passed the exam, I moved on. But I do feel bad for John because if he's having to pay for the exam and take it again next week, and if he has the same issue out of the gate, I'm going to waste my time with it.
Yeah. That's frustrating. And especially when you're bringing up that this is a legitimate problem and suddenly it's not presented back to you as if it is. Where do you even go with that? I think you go higher is what you do. I would just keep going higher in the list. All of those executives at CompTIA are all in that list. They all have people that can help them. It can be distributed out to the people that can help you the most. I think maybe it's the time to jump over the support lines because they're trying to fix a support problem, not realizing that this goes well beyond the scope of a support problem. That's really a challenge. But at least you passed. Now, was this the second of the two exams that you passed? Are you now A+ certified?
I am now A+ certified.
Yes,
yep.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. And I want to thank you also for providing your free instructional training videos because they've really helped me with the confidence to pass these exams.
Oh, it's great.
And the knowledge, of course. I appreciate it.
More than happy to help and glad it worked out well for you. Congratulations, Chuck, and best of luck.
Thank you.
This is one of those things that it seems to be an ongoing issue. There seems to really be a problem, and maybe I can do some poking around myself back within CompTIA and see if I can find somebody who can give me some insight into when we might expect a resolution to these types of problems, assuming, of course, they understand that it's as widespread and as bad as maybe they don't realize. Who knows? I'm kind of giving everybody the benefit of a doubt because this seems like something you should be able to work through this. And it's a horrible problem and it needs to be resolved. Let's go back to the phones. 520. Hi, caller. Which name were you going? You're coming in on line 4. Thanks for calling. Which name were you calling from? I had to make sure I pushed the right button.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Ryan. I'm from Tucson, Arizona.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, no problem. So I went ahead and I passed the Core 1 recently, a couple months ago, thanks to your videos and whatnot. I was actually calling because Core 2 has been actually a bit of a challenge for me. Command lines and all kinds of stuff. I got all your books and stuff. I'm studying up on it, but there have been a few setbacks in my life. So I've been, studying when I can. And during that time, a coworker of mine was telling me that I should just start looking around, applying, putting on my resume that I passed the Core 1 and then put, the Core 2 is in progress and I'm going to be taking that eventually here soon. And I applied for one place and I got a rejection email from it. So I guess I'm wondering, like, is that good advice? Should I just continue applying even though I haven't completed the full A+ for these entry-level jobs? Or should I just put all my effort into completing the A+? Like, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I just kind of wanted to get your insight on it.
I think your perspective, your possible understanding of this is probably right. As someone who was on the side of getting all the resumes and going through them, someone who has the certification is a check mark. I can lock it in, go, okay, they took the exam and they passed it. Literally everybody else could potentially be studying towards that certification. So it doesn't help me. It doesn't help me with the filtering process, only in that I can look at it and go, oh, you don't have that. You go in the list of people, you go in the stack of people who don't have this yet. Studying for it, you also don't have this yet. Have you never studied for it? Then you don't have this yet. You go into that pile if you don't have this yet. So it doesn't help the person making the decisions about whether to talk to you a little bit more. I don't think it sways anybody in a particular direction. I don't think passing that first exam and then finally saying you're working on the second one doesn't quite have the pull that many of us hoped that it would, because the people who are trying to make a decision on this job are looking for people that are qualified and have the certification in their pocket, if that's something that's important to them. Now, it may be that you are able to send your resume to somebody. They don't care if you have the A+ or not. And the fact that you passed the first exam and didn't pass the first exam literally does not matter. So you put it on your resume, but as it turns out, it didn't really matter because they weren't looking for that particular requirement. So that's one where I don't think it has as much help. It doesn't hurt, but I don't think it really helps anything. It's just taking up space on your resume that you could probably use to either make it look better or to put something else that is a little more, can sway you in one direction or another. The people that are making the decisions are ultimately going to see that you don't have the cert. Will it get you through the first round? A lot of the evaluation of your resume is done programmatically. It's done by a content management system just for resumes, your candidate management system. And the candidate system is looking at your resume, and if any particular words show up, it gives you a point or two. And at the end of it, it tells you how much your resume is worth as it's associated with this particular job opening. So it might get you through the first round because you may get extra points for putting CompTIA A+ on your resume, but then a human looks at it and goes, oh, it says CompTIA A+, but it says you're working on it. It says you don't have it yet. I'm going to take those points away from you. Or I'm going to even maybe it could work negatively. Are they trying to game this system? Are they sort of lying to me about this? They don't legitimately have this. That's suspicious to me. Maybe I put them on the rejection pile. Or, as other people mentioned in the chat room, it's a rejection. It's going to be one of a million that you get during the resume process of trying to find the job. It may just be that in this particular case, it was just the normal rejection you get because of the particular qualification they were looking for compared to the qualifications that you happen to have. And you putting that on your resume really had no difference. I don't think it helps as much as your associate might think, but I don't think it hurts necessarily. I just don't think it really gives you much of a leg up.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought. And yeah, it could have been a fluke, but I just kind of wanted to get clarification on that. And I appreciate that. I mean, I'll probably just end up putting all my efforts towards, getting the Core 2 knocked out so I can at least have a full certification. I just wanted to see if it was even worth a shot kind of thing,
The process of getting that first job in IT is sort of a science unto itself. You need to approach it with its own strategy. It's a game, and you need to learn how to play that game to be able to be top of the list. I created a few videos on my channel. One is how to get a job in IT with no experience, and you should absolutely watch that because you're in that position right now of trying to make a resume that highlights the right things and perhaps doesn't put the wrong things on it. And then I have two other videos on my site, my YouTube channel, of one is the 5 reasons your resume was rejected. And the other video is 5 more reasons why your resume was rejected. And I talk about things like creating customized cover letters, which a lot of people think are just throwaways, but cover letters give you an opportunity to highlight your material that perhaps other people are not. Certainly, if you don't put a cover letter, you've missed an opportunity. There's other things where I mentioned, definitely put this on your resume. Definitely do not put this on your resume. And I talk about that automated process of managing candidates. Those are in those 2 videos of why your resume was rejected on my YouTube channel. And I'll have Lori, since she's watching the replay of this, I'll have her add all 3 of those to the video description so you can find them easier later on. That might help you too, Ryan.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Professor.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
Of course. Thank you.
The process of going through the job hunt is one where it is it will beat you down every day. But I think, like anything else, once you've been beaten a little bit, your skin gets kind of tough. I'm kind of speaking as someone who has a YouTube channel. So I've gotten used to being beaten on all the time. The comments on the YouTube and the online is just a weird world. And you kind of get used to insults and weird things being thrown your way. And I have like a bark of skin now, just that it just bounces off. You sort of need to get into that mode when doing resumes. I've gotten so invested in a company and I've handed them my resume and I really wanted a job with that company and they sent me a rejection and it was just soul crushing. You need to be not quite as emotionally invested in those jobs because eventually you will figure out that that was either a bad idea in the first place or ultimately you find a different way to get there. There's always another plan to put together. If plan A doesn't work, go to plan B, go to plan C, go to plan D. And in IT, there's plenty of options available. You should always get ready just to customize your resumes. Make sure you have the best possible resume you can give to someone. Make sure you're following all the best practices for getting that job. If you get the job, you get the job. If you don't, you don't. Okay, sarah. You go to the next one. And then you just eventually, it's the law of averages. It's the law of large numbers. Eventually, somebody, whether they're smart or not, is going to say, okay, you got the job. And then all of a sudden, all that work you did, getting the job, going through the process, customizing your resume, creating a separate letter for everybody you sent this to, doing all of the things they tell you to do, suddenly it was all worth it. And you don't have to do it anymore. So that's the real key. Is it's one of those things where it's all about statistics until the point that it hits, and then all of a sudden it's 100%. So you want to get to that point, and don't worry so much about getting the rejections. That's just normal. Just be ready for it and keep it moving. That's all you can do. Just keep those resumes going out, keep looking for the jobs, keep applying, keep meeting people, keep getting involved with your local user groups, keep meeting people in the user groups, getting your LinkedIn up to date. Make sure you connect to all the people in your user group and LinkedIn on there. Make sure you're involved in the Discords for those user groups. There's plenty of opportunities to network in your area, even if we're not doing it in person. To the 708 area code, hi caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm calling from Chicago.
Hey, Josh, what can we do for you?
So I'm following up from, I called back in September.
I see that.
Asking you basically the exact same question that the previous caller, forgive me, I don't remember his name, was asking about the resume and whether I should put that I'm studying for the A+. And I just kind of want to give some feedback because your video addresses really well and it worked for me, is that I got an entry-level tech specialist position at a school with zero experience, all because of a referral.
Aha.
They were desperate. They needed to fill a position as fast as possible. The employee who worked there completely vouched for me, and they just got me in right away.
Isn't it remarkable how strong that is? The just knowing somebody. Is this somebody who worked there that you knew very well? Was it an acquaintance? How did you know the person who worked there?
Yeah, I mean, it's my brother-in-law, so I don't think
right.
everybody's going to be that fortunate, but you never know. Like a cousin could work just the same.
Not my cousins. I mean, yes, of course, my cousins, but it doesn't even have to be a family member. Of course, it could be somebody you know from just an acquaintance. That's somebody you met at a trade show online in a user group. The fact is, knowing somebody really does have an impact. And in this case, it really did. Having somebody who's a relative, probably even more so, because they could sort of trust your relative. Now, of course, you have to be especially good because now your relative's reputation is on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going phenomenally so far.
Great.
I love it. And, I took a pay cut, a pretty significant pay cut. However, it was a career choice that I decided to make at 33 years old, which I think is still relatively young, but
I agree.
I'm gaining that experience. I have the 1001 pass, just waiting on the 1002. And I just wanted to let everybody know, don't overlook referrals. I know, I'll completely admit, I basically wrote that off when you discussed it in your video. I'm like, I don't have any referrals. How am I going to get that? And then boom, my brother-in-law hit me up and asked, because I had asked him about it before and it was a dead end. So
Great.
I just gave up.
Yeah, but he remembered.
He did. He took care of me. So, just wanted to give some feedback around that.
Phenomenal. I am so glad to hear that. And I like your strategy, knowing that you're moving from kind of one vertical market now into IT. This is something a lot of people, I think, get caught up on, is when you move between industries like that, it often comes with a downgrade in pay. But I also tell people in IT, the upgrades in pay can be significant and they are available. More importantly, you just need some more time under your belt. You just need a little bit more raw experience. I have spoken in other study groups about the 3-year rule that we sort of laugh about in the industry, but there's some truth to it that you tend to stay at one place for 3 years and then you move to a different place because that is your upward mobility. It moves you into a new job with more experience, with more responsibility, usually with more pay. So every 3 years, you're getting a significant pay increase, not just an annual increase in pay, but usually you're making a jump into a higher scale that is going to give you more money or into a different part of IT. I think it's a great investment into your future. You are young. You are able to make these moves now relatively easy. And now the point is to keep learning what you're doing and be ready for the next jump and not be afraid to go and move up the line. And I think you have some experience in the world. You have worldly experience. I think you know what to do next along those lines. And I think you're well on your way.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate the call. That's exciting, though, that you put together this plan, you go after the jobs, and then these concepts of how do I get that job. I talk about those 4 elements in my video on how to get a job with no experience. And the 4 elements are a formal education, because employers are still looking for those. Industry certifications. I think we all can appreciate those. Having some type of practical experience, and I realize there's a give and take there, especially if you don't have experience in the industry. There are things you can do. And it's that 4th element that he said, well, I wasn't quite sold on that. The 4th element is you know someone who works there. And you would think, but wait, a formal degree, industry certifications, some practical experience, and I know someone? How valuable can that really be? Turns out really, really valuable. Let's go back to phone lines. 386 area code from Florida. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Eric. I was in the stream today. Super awesome. Actually, only the second one I've been in.
Oh, thanks for joining.
Was there 2 days ago for Core 1.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So this isn't a question about any career, any testing things. It's actually just about your content because I love it. I think there was one video that you had in your Core 1 study material where you had like some hands-on thing. You opened up a laptop or something.
Okay.
And it just got me thinking. Do you have any plans for adding more of that type of content where you have like the technology in front of you and you record yourself? I don't know. Are there other places where you might have this already? I don't know. I really like the hands-on stuff.
I kind of like that. I think you're right. There's a need. I do quite a bit of hands-on in the 1002 because it's online. You can be at the command line. I step through command line prompts. We do things in the Windows environment. We reboot the machine. There's things that we can do interactively in that scenario. But I don't do quite it. I would say I could always do more of that. You can always do more. And I think that would be a really neat thing to do. One of the challenges I ran into with putting that together is that it's really hard to get good video of something inside of a computer. And I think I'm working my way through how to do that in a couple of ways. One is that I now have a new platform. It's kind of a developer's desk where you can put a motherboard and a power supply and all the cards, and it's effectively an open case. It doesn't have any sides on it, which would make it easier for me to do this. Another thing I thought would be kind of fun to do, and if you've seen this on online, there's a great, I don't want to call it a game of how to install things into a computer, but it sort of is that. It's a 3D modeling using your computer, installing and upgrading your computer. You can install memory, you can install adapter cards, you can install all these other things inside a machine, but it's all online on the front end, which is kind of neat. You don't have to have hardware in front of you to be able to do that. I'm trying to figure out, somebody in the chat room will probably find the name of it before I'm able to pull it up, because I clearly am having a problem even logging into Steam at this point. But I'm going to find it because it's in, and of course now I need my Steam code, and somebody in the chat room knows what game I'm referring to. I think it's a PC game, PC Builder Simulator. I think that's the one I'm referring to. PC Builder, which makes sense to me. PC Builder it looked amazing. I've only kind of looked at YouTube videos of people using it. But what a lot of fun this looked like, because you can then build your own system in this PC Builder. I'm trying to bring up the web page on it right now so that everybody can see this. It's at theirregularcorporation.com. Of course it is. No, I don't need to sign up for the newsletter, but it's got a simulator here that allows you to do that. I'm going to quickly turn off the volume so people can kind of see the video playing as we go through this. But all of these are screenshots from the game, if you want to call it that. But what a great educational tool this happens to be. You can plug in your own systems. They have partnered with different hardware manufacturers. So there's your case. You can slide in motherboards. You can connect things together. So it's not it's kind of a fun way to at least start along these lines of working with this hardware without having it in front of you. I thought that might be a fun thing to do too, is to kind of get this game in front of me, and we could all effectively play the game together of having these things work and see what kind of systems we can build out of it. That's one that I think would be a fun way to do it. Because all we're really trying to do is look at the basics. If you're somebody who's built computers before, this is probably boring. But if you're somebody who's never put one together, what is it like to put the motherboard into a system? What's it like to install the memory? What's it like to plug in those video cards? Where do we plug in the video card? What are all these different interfaces on the motherboard itself? And they're all in this game. It's got great 3D graphics, and you can spin things around and find a machine you want and then plug it into the computer. It's remarkable. And unlike me, it's not going to break any pins or put too much of the heat putty on and get everywhere and make a mess. So that's a benefit too, I guess.
Gotcha.
That
okay,
I am sort of looking at that. I think more hands-on is certainly an idea for the future. It's involved. It's an involved process, but I've now got the studio. We've now got the means to be able to do it. It's now just a matter of making that happen.
Okay. Have you ever thought of going through a motherboard manual or something, or just some other spec sheet and sort of like, here's how you would navigate it? Because, I looked through like my motherboard because, I was able to find like, computer information. I'm like, oh, it's an Asus, Prime B450 or something. And I'm like, okay, well, let me just Google that. And when you're going through the spec sheet, it's just all this stuff. And I recognize a lot of the terms, and I see, CPU, memory, and all that. But then, you get to other things that it's like, oh, I haven't seen that before. And, it's a very steep learning curve when you actually kind of delve into the actual material. And I don't know, like, having something I don't know if you would be interested in like doing like a tutorial or something on these types of manuals, but like that'd be amazing. Even just to be like, oh, here's where you can find the information, because I feel like an A+ certified person should be somewhat familiar with that stuff, and yet like there's still questions that I have to this day, like
right, because the exam only goes so far.
Yeah.
This is the problem I have, though, is that I want to give you a course that is explicitly and particularly focused on what you need to know to pass the exam. And of course, that's important for people that are trying to earn their certification. But there's a whole scope of things that go outside the exam objectives that are still important things to know, but it turns out they don't help you pass the exam. I mean, it's really interesting to go through the process of building a system, choosing the right motherboard, combining that with the right processor, making sure you're buying the right memory. Where do you plug them together? And I find that a fun thing to do. I've built a number of computers, and I enjoy doing that, but it actually doesn't help you for your exam. At least not direct help for your exam. Of course, anything you learn outside the scope has some application to the things you're learning that are in scope, but not as much as the things that are actually in scope, if you know what I mean. So that's why I've made a particular choice with my training course to stay completely focused on the exam objectives and not go outside of those, because you're just now learning things you're never going to need for the exam. But there's some things outside the scope that are really great. For those folks that are interested in learning more about putting machines together, finding the right motherboard, finding the chipset that works for you, finding the right CPU that goes with that chipset, finding the right pieces to go along with that. I use PC Part Picker all the time to be able to do that. Plus, it's great you want to get in and see what are other people putting together. They put their own builds on here, so you could see, I want to see this Ryzen 9 build and see what they used. They used it for gaming. Here's the part list they used and the prices, and I can see exactly what case they used, what CPU they used, what motherboard they used, and in some cases can even see what options are available, because PC Part Picker will say, well, if you don't like that memory, try using this memory, and if it's in PC Part Picker, it's all compatible with each other. They've already done the testing. They already know what pieces go with each other. So it's almost impossible to buy one motherboard and a CPU and have them not be compatible. PC Part Picker will tell you if they are compatible or not. It's a fantastic website. I probably still have my login and can go through some of the older builds. The streaming server you're watching this on, I built, and I really started with PC Part Picker to find all the parts and put that together. That's another one you could use kind of outside the scope of the exam that might give you a little insight into that, Eric.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I built a computer, and I get what you're saying about the whole video recording of it, because I tried that and it's all rubbish. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had any plans for that, but yeah, I get it. And thank you for the advice on the simulator, because I actually wasn't aware of that at all. Actually,
I'm going to have to load that up and try it myself and make sure I'm not talking about something that's just awful. But it looked really fun, and some of the reviews looked fantastic, or I wouldn't have mentioned it.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you so much,
Eric. I appreciate the call. Thank you for calling. Both of those are so much fun to work with. Let me see if I can grab my, hold on a second. I'm going to go outside the scope of this for a moment, but let me grab, because I got it right here. That's not the view I wanted to give you. I've got on the floor of the studio, which you can't see. I'm connected. Hold on. I'm wrapped around my chair. This is great video, by the way, for those of you watching. So I've put together, I told you about this view of having a motherboard making room. So you could see this tech station. This is a tech station from High Speed PC. Here's a fan. There's the connections for the motherboard. And it's effectively an offline, it's got a little dust on it now. Should have cleaned it off, but I didn't know you were coming. So I could put a motherboard on the top of this. It's got a fan on the side. There's a place to put a power supply underneath. And it's just this very simple motherboard stand, if you want to look at it that way. We could sort of use it for, here we go. So check that out. So now we can kind of put the machine together. This kind of replaces the case. Here at the top is where your adapter cards would go. It's perfectly designed for that. And then you can see it all in one place. That'd be a lot of fun to do too. And I need a new PC. I need a new gaming computer. So why wouldn't we put one of those together? That's the idea, is I got this so that I could, in the next rev of the A+, grab a motherboard, put it on this, get some great video, because it's in the open. There's no case on the side. And it's designed for a bench. So you're testing something, you want to take a computer components and test them all out. That's what it's designed for. Just be great for this as well, to be able to do that. And putting a PC together and sort of do some of the best practices of putting a PC together we could do in this open environment, and then try that out. That'd be a lot of fun, I think. It's just a matter of getting through all of the other things that I have. This is the challenge, of course, is that right now, updating Security Plus, updating Network Plus next. A Plus will need to be updated sometime in the next year or so, maybe just after a year. So maybe I can fit one in there somewhere. I have another video that I need to put together for you. I have all the video now in one place, where I lost a hard drive in my NAS. So I need to show you that video. What happened? How did I know it went bad? How did I replace it? What problems did I have replacing it? What type of RAID am I using? So based on the type of RAID, how did I know which drive it was on this 12 drive? Do I have 12? I have 12 drives in this array. How do I know which drive it was? So I take you kind of through the process I went through to replace that and get it up and running, which was a lot of things happened wrong on that one. I didn't lose any data. I finally got it fixed, but it made me realize, wow, there were some things I wasn't ready for, and I really need to go plan for that. So that's what I did. Let's go back to the phones. If I click the button, there we go. 915 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Rudy, and I'm calling from San Antonio, Texas.
Hey, Rudy. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just thought I'd call in and give a bit of a testimonial to your content, and then maybe use that story to give hope to people who are feeling a little discouraged.
Oh, it's great. Let's hear it.
So in San Antonio, there's a big government contractor industry. It's like where all of the three-letter acronym agencies are.
Right.
Excuse me. And I was living in Austin, and I got the opportunity to get a job with one of these contractors, and they were in need. They were like in desperate need for a service desk analyst. And they said, look, you got the job, you're ready to go, but you need Sec Plus in 1 month.
Oh,
you got
wow.
30 days. if not, you gotta get another job. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So I scrambled, right? And you know, I had always been a quote unquote computer guy, network guy, whatever. But to like go in on a professional level, get a cert, I was kind of like bewildered. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? I found your videos, and I just, went hard on the Sec Plus stuff, and I got it. I scored like 790, I think.
Wow.
And it's like, it was great. It was great. The study material was awesome. To switch careers, because I was a construction worker in Austin, Texas, and I switched to IT, and it was terrifying because I don't know where this myth of like construction workers are low paid. It's not true.
Right.
I was making very near six figures as a construction worker, but to go to a service desk position was a massive pay cut.
Right.
But like I said, the Sec Plus, your content helped me get the Sec Plus certification. And in 1.5 years, I'm already moving through the ranks. I'm now in the quality assurance sector of IT. And, it all started with Sec Plus and stuff. So if people are feeling discouraged about taking a pay hit, switching industries, it's scary. There's just no way around it. But when you apply yourself, it'll happen. And using Professor Messer's stuff really helps you get those foundational certs.
Wow. Congratulations on getting that done in a month, which is already aggressive. Even more aggressive is that you're moving from one industry into technology, which that's already a big deal. And then on top of that, taking and moving into this new company in a different city, which I know it's not across the country, but anytime you make a move, it's a stressful situation. They always say the two most stressful things is moving to a different job and then moving to a different house, a different city, or a different address. And you got to do all of that at the same time.
It was very terrifying.
That's strong, though. You made it happen, and I'm glad you were able to take advantage of some of the videos. But as I've told others, I wasn't the one that had to take the exam. You were, and you ended up with a fantastic score on that. So congratulations. And you are right. IT has no ceiling associated with it. However much money you would like to make in IT, you can make in IT. It's not something that happens overnight, but you can relatively quickly, certainly compared to other industries, move up as long as you're willing to apply yourself, learn new things, meet new people, and be positive about the experience. It's remarkable how quickly you can move and make those decisions. It's one where you can easily get back to six figures in IT, and in some cases, multiple six-figure salaries, depending on what you want to do and who you want to work for and what type of job you would like. But you get to now make that decision. And I would argue perhaps there's a little more longevity in IT than there is in someone having to work in construction as well, which might help you and your back and your knees eventually.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
One last little bit of advice that I've learned just from my brief time in the industry is that specialization really helps in upward mobility. So being a service desk analyst, you kind of got to be a jack of all trades, but through volunteering for different projects, specializing in quality assurance and software testing, that really, don't think it pigeonholes you, it makes you marketable. So if you can figure out something to specialize in, go for that. And that's pretty much all I got.
Fantastic advice, Rudy. And thank you for the call. And I know everybody in the chat room and everybody watching thanks you as well. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that last bit of advice is probably the one thing that is the biggest difference. There were two things right there at the end of that conversation that I felt were so important about what you do once you get the job. Once you get an IT, probably going to be some type of service desk position or help desk position or, entry level position. It might be at a security operations center. It might be at a network operations center. It might be at just a broad general help desk. But at some point, you're going to want to move up. So how do you do that? Well, at the help desk, you're in the middle of everything. You get to see what the networking people are doing. You get to see what the QA people are doing. You get to see what the desktop management system people are doing. You get to see what the server team is doing. You can see what the security folks are doing. And all of them have projects going on. Most of the time when you're working a help desk or a service desk, you come in at 8, you leave at 5, and your day's over. Maybe you have the night shift or maybe you have the overnight shift. But it is a very set time frame. But there's probably going to be a group that has to set up, and I'll take examples of the things I used to do. There would be the desktop team had to set up 100-seat training facility in a weekend. Well, they need some people to help. They need some people to help set up the desks, to make sure the network runs are there, to resolve any problems they run into, to do some imaging. They need warm bodies, and they will take any help they can get. So introducing yourself to that team, asking them and saying, I'd really like to do something with desktop support in my future. If you're in a situation where you need some extra hands, you have a project going on the weekend, you need somebody to help do a little bit of grunt work, I'd love to be there and look over your shoulder. And it's remarkable how many of those people will take you up on that. Like, a warm body who wants to lift some equipment and help us set up this room? Absolutely, be here Saturday at 9. Great, I'll be here. And then you learn the people, you know what's going on there. They understand your skills. And now when a job opening shows up, they know who to call first. Like, you're going to now work with us. You're now working over here. We're taking you out of the help desk. That will move you up quickly. Not necessarily and not always with money, but sometimes it does. but it gives you that experience you need to now move to the next job with money. That's the piece that I think is probably the most important part. And we've already had a couple of calls today where people have said, yeah, I took a pay hit. I was making this, now I'm making less. But that's just temporary. That is just a minor blip in the road, because with IT, you're going to start making more money. It does take a little bit of time. It takes time to get that experience under your belt. But if you are motivated, and if you find a niche, and that was the thing that Rudy mentioned, was finding something that nobody else is doing. I mentioned earlier that everybody in their data center has that machine in the back that nobody wants to touch because nobody knows how it works, yet they have to support it. It's like a critical system. And for some reason, nobody's able to support it. The person who knew it left, and now nobody knows it. I'll do it. In fact, I've done that. And then suddenly you're the one who has all the knowledge of that system, and then you can document things and hand it out and show people, all right, now we all know about it. And now you're the one who is the expert in that system. And in fact, I became an expert when I saw my company I was working for bought a sniffer. At the time, that was the name of the product. That's where that term comes from. Protocol analyzer. And I could see all the packets going over the network. And I thought, that's amazing. Let me learn as much as I can about this box. The next job I got was working for the company that made the sniffer. Because I became the expert in my company on everything this box could do. And I got it doing things we had no idea it even had the capability to do, but was buried in the software. And I'm like, did you see this? Watch this. And you have it do a dance. Those are skills that you will be able to use the rest of your career, and they're skills that you can use immediately to move you up within the ranks of where you are. Always take advantage of that. Back to the phone lines, the 206 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hello, Professor Messer. This is Patrick here again.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, just one quick thing. The last caller covered help desk experience. So my cousin, he's actually a contractor through the IT industry, and he gave me some tips on what is the definition and meaning of help desk. So that could be anything. Now, in terms of IT, I don't know how different that could be, but if there's anything as far as like troubleshooting and how to navigate the computer, do you feel that it's all about, how can I say it? Do you feel that it's all about knowing mostly how to navigate through the computer, some on and some off training within 1 or 2 years? Or is it, the reality is that you've been on a program that's only particularly to help desk to, say that, hey, I do have help desk experience. And so with that being said, would that also jumpstart that initial pay from like maybe 60,000 to like 109,000, just based off the verbiage and what qualifies for a help desk position?
I don't know that the way that you would explain or the verbiage you would use to describe your skills necessarily determines your final amount of pay, but it's a good point you make about what the help desk is doing for you and perhaps what the help desk is showing your employer. The employer doesn't want you to be in the help desk for the rest of your career. Unless, of course, you would like to manage the help desk. And there are people I've met who are help desk managers, who are amazing technologists, who are able to resolve problems. I was working with one that was with a company in Silicon Valley. They made infrastructure equipment. And his perspective was whenever somebody opened a ticket, the resolution of the ticket was, are you happy? Did this problem get solved and make you happy with the answer? He really didn't care how long it took. He wasn't that concerned with getting lots of phone calls coming through as quickly as possible. His final goal, his determination on is the help desk successful was the customer happy with the outcome? And I wish more help desks worked that way. So if you want to go into help desk management needs people like that can make that happen. I think the people that hire you in the help desk are looking to evaluate what type of employee you are. Are you coming in on time? Are you leaving the proper time? Are you happy being here? You're a good person to work with, because we would like you to be here and we would like to do other things. But if you're not fun to be around, maybe this will be the last job you have with our company. So there is a little bit of that. They're kind of feeling you out to see if you're a good person to work with. But this is also a place where they want to see you out of this job in 9 months, in a year and a half, or whatever makes sense for your organization. They want to move you into the workstation team, the server team, the network team, the database team, the QA team, or whatever it happens to be. They don't want you being in the help desk for 10 years. And I know there are some people I've met that have been in the help desk for many, many years that just still haven't made their way out of it for whatever reason. Although if the help desk is what you want to do for your career, there's a place for you to do that as well. It's not that you have to leave, but your employer probably has the idea that instead of hiring somebody off the street who doesn't know our network, doesn't know our people, doesn't know our processes, and doesn't know our applications, let's move up somebody who works here, who already knows these things, who can get into the new job and already be off to the races. All they now have to learn are the differences in that position. The help desk is a place where you kind of sit in the middle and you watch everything else go by. You should be able to put together a strategy like that. That should move you out of the help desk, and almost always is going to give you more money. So there is some financial benefit to doing that. But you have to kind of find those people, work with them, go to lunch with them, find out what projects they're going on and volunteer with them, learn what they're doing so that you are just as knowledgeable as somebody who might work in that particular department, and be somebody they would want to hire. It takes a little bit of work on your part. It takes a little bit of strategizing on your part. It takes a little bit of relationship building on your part. But all of that's all kind of fun, meeting people and working with people and doing those types of things. The important part is that now you've built those relationships, and they're going to be relationships that you'll have throughout your career, but it moves you up the line. And that's all we're looking to do, is move to that next tier. So that's what you really do. If you're really going through and working through the paces, you should be moving from tier to tier to tier. And eventually you will move from that lower level pay to the higher level pay. Sometimes it happens in one jump, sometimes it happens in 2 or 3, but you are able to get there.
Okay. Another thing is, because I also do work a 9 to 5. I'm actually here at the post office. And so the main reason why I went out, my feet hurt, to be honest with you. I'm just done. And, 27,000 steps a day will do it for you for the last 7 years.
Right.
And so with breaks, now, what are you guys' breaks? Because I know in IT it's very different. Now, and I don't know what the hours are in IT. And correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes you'll get possibly in a 6-hour maybe work day, you probably get 2 hours worth of work. If I'm not mistaken, if I am, you can correct me, but just a whole different world. So in your experiences, what have you noticed in the difference in how lunches and breaks, just to kind of get an idea of what I'll be getting into the next couple months?
Process and procedure varies widely in most organizations. Usually, though, in the help desk, you have to kind of be available and on the phone, or at least accessible to go fix these problems during the normal day. So those tend to be a little more strict with the times that you're able to do things. Like, okay, you go to lunch at 11, but you got to be back to 12. You get that hour for lunch, or you get an hour and a half for lunch, assuming you don't take breaks during the morning or afternoon. But most IT organizations are relatively flexible along those lines. It's certainly not the very large organization you would have with something like the U.S. Postal Service, but there is a little more regimen to the entry-level positions. Once you get up to the next step, however, the requirements of your time can vary widely. Sometimes the companies have sometimes they'll put you on salary, and that salary position requires that at least one weekend out of the month that you're on call. And if something happens to your particular responsibilities during that time frame, you'll get a phone call on a Saturday night. You've got to correct and resolve whatever problem that happens to be, or find a way to push that off until Monday, or you get to decide how to resolve that particular issue. Some places I have worked, I have been on call the entire time, where when you went home, all that meant was you were at home. But if the phone rang, you were at work. And ideally and hopefully that came with a little bit of more pay. It didn't. But that there's some places that expect that of you. I've also worked jobs where you really didn't start work until Monday morning. And then at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, your day was over. And you did not get phone calls afterwards. There was not a place to get calls. And your weekends were available for you. And you got holidays off. But there was a lot of travel. So there's always sort of a back and forth. There's always an advantage and disadvantage with those types of jobs. But you can find one that kind of fits your requirements. I work with somebody who had a job at a state government agency working with some fantastic technology. And he was a very skilled technologist. And I said, with your skills, you could move out of state government and go into the corporate or even the manufacturer world and even stay in town for that and make more money. And he says, well, yes, but I have things at home that require that I have a much more flexible schedule with work, and they're able to give me that here. A third party or a manufacturer won't give me that level of flexibility. And he was right. That's exactly the case. So you can find the job that works for you, and it's remarkable how flexible companies can be and how willing they are to set up a schedule that works for you. Once you get to above the help desk and you're making a lot more money, you tend to be your own manager. You tend to be responsible for your own time. And of course, you will have a manager that says, taking a break, a 10-minute break every 15 minutes probably isn't appropriate. But, walking out and taking a 10-minute break every now and then is something you don't have to clock in or clock out. There's nobody looking over your shoulder. You're responsible for your time. You know when the next meeting is going to be. Everything is on your calendar anyway. So we know where you are and what you're doing. And you've got a lot of projects to work on that you've got to get through anyhow. Nobody is sitting around in IT with nothing to do. So fortunately, that's some of the advantages of working in IT. It's a little more professional along those lines, and it gives you a little more flexibility, but you may have to look around to find the type and the terms that work best for you.
Okay, and then one more. What is the continuation pay after you get your A+ and Network Plus on average?
I don't know that there's an average. I think that it's really more about up to you. I can't say once you get an A+, here's how much more you make, because there isn't one of those things. It's really the case of once you get your A+, there are some employers who look upon that as being an additional credential that might put you at the top of the list of the people we would hire. So it may even be getting an A+ is more of a hire, no hire situation. It may be you get pay or you don't get pay. There's your difference in pay. 0 and whatever you would make in this job. But I can't say that I could point to anything and say, here's exactly or an average what somebody makes. There's a number of that show that people with A+ average this amount. People with Network Plus average this pay, which is sort of a difficult statistical analysis to do, because generally if you have your A+, you could have even moved up into a higher level by now, making more money. But the statistics show that you make more money because of that, not because you have your A+. So it's hard to make that determination. But I would say, based on just a broad understanding of certifications in the industry, Microsoft, Cisco, Amazon, VMware, CompTIA, whatever it happens to be, the better credentialed you are, the more people tend to give you opportunity. Plus, the more credentialed you are, you could ostensibly look at a person and go, well, they're a little more knowledgeable with those topics. Therefore, they're worth a little more money. So if they were to ask for a little more money, we'd be a little more willing to give that to them. So it becomes a little more of a negotiation factor as well. And if you've got something to stand on in the negotiation factor, like I've got these 5 certificates, people will go, yeah, you're probably worth it then. We'll give you that little bit of extra that you're asking for because you've shown that you happen to be worth it. So what that number is, I have no idea. I probably couldn't put a value to it. And it's different depending on where you are in the country, and it's different depending on where you are in the world.
Okay, because you actually answered a question that that I was going to ask, I think last week, but what I meant was continuation. Is after you get your certification, how much is it to keep your certification current per year?
This is one where you've got some options because all of us are going through this. If you have your A+, your Network Plus, your Security Plus, and I even talked in the first hour of this about CEUs, which are Continuing Education Unit credits, that CompTIA wants you to keep that certification active. And they have a whole process on their website about what you can do. And they talk about renewing with a single activity. You could take a single online app-based exam called a not exam, but more of a CBT, computer-based training, which is called CertMaster CE, Continuing Education. With this one option, you can upgrade and keep your certification up to date. I think that's probably what most people do these days. You can also earn higher level certifications. So if you take your A+, and then a year from now, you earn your Network Plus, you've just also renewed your A+ for another 3 years. If a year later you take your Security Plus, you've now automatically updated your Network Plus and A+ for another 3 years. So there are things you can do. You can also get non-CompTIA certifications. You can pass other certification exams. You could take the exam again if you wanted to. There's lots of ways to maintain your certification and keep things up to date. They are all on the CompTIA website, though. And the renewal process from anybody, not just CompTIA, but all renewal processes tend to be kind of involved. So this may take a little bit of reading to find the one that fits best for you, but they give you a lot of different options. If you like collecting CEUs, you can do that. If you like taking an online training class, you can take that. If you like just taking the exam again, you can do that. You can take a higher level exam, you can do that. So there's tons of different things you can do. All of them have advantages and disadvantages, but they give you a way that's flexible to be able to maintain and keep these certifications. I know people that have had their Security Plus certification for 10 years. They took it 10 years ago, and they just make sure they are updating it every 3 years to maintain the cert, and they are just as Security Plus certified as somebody who takes their certification exam today and passes it. So from the somebody who's an employer, they don't care how you got it. They don't care when you got it. All they care is that it's current and that it is the Security Plus certification, and they're happy. So you decide how you'd like to do that.
Awesome. Well, Professor Mercer, thank you again for the knowledgeable information. And, I hope, peace and blessings to everyone listening. And, to you, thank you. And when I do pass this, you're going to hear me call back with a little bit more excitement in my voice because this is study time and I'm almost ready to pass it.
Good for you. Best of luck, Patrick.
Thanks, Professor Messer.
That's always good to know, too, is that there is an end to this. There's an end game to all of this. There's a reason we go through this. It's to get a job or get a better job. I guess there's a percentage of us that are going through this. They're just doing it for personal enjoyment and personal knowledge, which is great, too. But the vast majority, I think, of us taking these certification exams are doing it because we would like to get a job or get a better job. And I love that people are doing that because I did that. I've been in the industry. I started down with the grunt work. I worked up into the corporate help desk. I worked into the workstation and server administration team. I worked into the network team. I worked into the security team. Those are things that anybody can do. You just need to apply yourself to get there. The opportunity is out there, especially now. We would think that in technology, and we were always told in technology, this is going to put people out of business. This is going to get rid of jobs. Technology is going to replace people. And I guess there's a portion of that that's true. There's not a lot of people making buggy whips any longer. But look at all the job opportunities that are just exploding for IT. There's way too much out there. There's way too many jobs available. You just now need to go out and get them. Caller, thanks for holding for so long. The 253 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name's Ahanu. I'm from Seattle, but I'm living in Honolulu, Hawaii at the moment.
Well, thanks for calling.
So I work at my university help desk. I didn't really need any certifications. They just really needed people, so I got hired.
Great.
I haven't done any of my certifications yet, but I'm looking to get into cybersecurity. So I'm wondering, should I get my A+, or should I just go straight to network and security plus?
I like that you said network and security plus in that list rather than just security plus, which I think in the industry, there's a lot of people that aren't aware of the job opportunities available in security and what it takes to get those. Cybersecurity is probably the biggest one that people are interested in right now. It's probably the area of IT that has some of the biggest gaps of jobs available that we just don't have enough people for. And primarily because it's hard to get up to a level where you are qualified to be working in cybersecurity. In some very large municipalities, you may be able to find companies that have a security operations center or a SOC. And in those cases, they may have a grouping of entry-level jobs available for the security operations center. They don't expect you to have a lot of knowledge in security. They're going to get you into that level of understanding the security side of things. But they know that you are an entry level and they're going to kind of start you at that part. But if you really want to get into IT security, and cybersecurity is kind of a broad term, but when I say security, I really do mean IT security because that's the field I'm probably most familiar with. I am most familiar with that, which is the area of an organization that is responsible for protecting the data and the users and making sure that everyone has access to the applications while making sure that none of the bad guys are able to get in. So they're responsible for the firewalls, for the IPsec tunnels, especially IPsec tunnels to third parties. They're probably responsible for authentication mechanisms for multiple authentication methods. They're probably responsible for keeping track of logs and having consolidation tools and SIMs to be able to report on those logs. And then, of course, able to make sure that operating systems are safe, servers are safe, workstations are safe, that any new technology brought into the organization is one that can be protected. How do you keep your tablets protected? How do we keep data on phones protected? You know, that's a broad grouping of responsibilities. And you don't just jump into that job. It's not like, okay, I'm out of college. Now let's go start our job in IT security. Well, there's a lot of stuff you need to learn first. And probably the one area that provides you the biggest foundation for a cybersecurity job is the network. Practically everything I just mentioned, especially as it relates to firewalls, IPS, cloud-based malware detection, IPsec tunnels, connectivity to the internet, those are all networking challenges that need a layer of security put right on top of them. But you can't implement security on those unless you understand how IP works, how IP routing works, how implementing that in a switched environment, putting in multiple firewalls in a redundant configuration, maybe as active-active or active-passive. How does that integrate into the existing infrastructure that you already have? How do you make sure all your traffic flows through it in the right direction? You know, all of those are networking problems. So I often tell people, if you're planning to get into security, one of the best things that you can do for a foundation is become an expert on the network. Don't just get a network certification. Really become an expert in what's happening over the network. Understand routing, switching, understand dynamic routing, understand internet connectivity, understand Ethernet, understand the frames, understand IP, understand a packet capture, all of those things. Be able to read it like you're in the Matrix. You're seeing all the stuff come down the screen and you can pick it out like it's just second nature to you. That's what you need to focus on, is that level of knowledge. Because once you have that foundation, you can really go anywhere in IT. You can go into servers, you can go into databases, you can go into security, you can go into higher level networking, and plus all of those pay really well, which is really good too. So if you're planning to go into security, if that's your eventual plan is I want to do something related to security, you should really right now at the very beginning of your studies already start planning to get that foundation in networking, and that's going to position you for whatever comes next after that.
Oh, okay, that's really great advice. Thank you. So should I still get my A+?
Well,
should I just?
You're on the help desk. You've got people that have already hired you for that job, There's a couple of reasons you might want to. One of those is that you may need it to show a year from now. You're going to stay at the help desk for a year. In a year from now, you might want a raise. You might say, I've been here a year. I've learned a lot of things. And here's an example of how I've learned those things. I'm more valuable now because I have my A+. How about some more money? It's a good leverage in negotiation to have that. You also might be in a position where you want to plan for any contingencies. Although we hope that the jobs we have today will be here tomorrow, there are some people who go into work the next day and suddenly the company is not there anymore. They've gone bankrupt, or they've laid off their help desk, or they're now outsourcing their help desk. These things happen all the time. But if you have the credentials in your pocket, you can now go to the next company and say, I have some help desk experience and I have my A+ cert. Why don't you hire me? And now you've at least got something that you could show people. I really do know what I'm doing, not just the practical knowledge that I have, but I have some industry knowledge. And I think you actually learned something when taking the A+ information that perhaps you're not going to get on a day-to-day at the help desk. You'll start learning about things in an operating system that maybe you don't touch a lot. You'll get a little Linux knowledge, a little Mac OS knowledge. You'll learn more about the Windows operating system. You might learn how to install it a little better and some of the processes and things that you're seeing elsewhere. That might help you with your day-to-day job, and it might help you propel out of your day-to-day job if you ever want to. So there might be a good reason to have that A+ there. The negatives, of course, is that it takes time. There's money involved in doing that. And you're in a help desk position now. It's not going to help you get the job that you're in now. So it has limited help from a job hunt perspective. Maybe what it's going to help you is next step perspective. And I think it's a good foundation if you're planning to take the Network Plus or planning to take the Security Plus. Now you've kind of got a little bit from all three of those to pull from, and putting them all three together and showing an employer, look at this foundational set of knowledge I have, can't hurt. So there may be some advantages there too.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess I'll get it then because, definitely at the help desk at my university, we don't even support Linux. So, most of my experience is with, Windows and Mac OS. I really don't know much about Linux. So, yeah, thank you for stopping some sense into me. I should just get the A+. Thank
sure,
you.
It can't hurt. Congratulations. Best of luck with that job and best of luck with your A+.
Thank you.
That's always something I think that we sometimes skip over, is that the things that we are doing with these certifications, of course, have a professional reason that we're doing it. But knowing some of the things that we do day to day and then applying these extra things onto it and learning more about it might give you a perspective to say, I want to learn more about those things. Maybe going through the Linux part of A+ makes you realize, I'm really interested in Linux. Windows is nice and all, but Linux stuff, there's an appeal there. Let me go learn more about that. Maybe then you go get a Red Hat certification. Maybe then you go get your Linux Plus certification. Maybe you end up going to work for a company and managing their Linux systems just because you took the A+ and had an interest in the Linux side. So you never know where this leads you, but unless you dip your toe in the water, you try a little bit of that appetizer and go, well, I think we might want more of that. That's the benefit of IT. You can go anywhere you want, do any of those things. Let's go to Atlanta, the 470 area code. If I can click the button. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. My name is Angelo. I spoke on the group, on the study group, a few months back in November or October, I remember.
Back in November, you sure were. Thanks for calling again.
Yes, sir. I took my A+ finally. I passed it back in January. So I thank you for that. You actually helped me out a lot. There's a lot of material that I need to go over that was easily, in my opinion, it was easier to study over with flashcards and, a lot of memorization techniques and stuff like that. But I find myself with the Core 2 studying, it's a little more different. It's a lot of more hands-on in practice, and I've been told to practice and, play with installations and playing with the volumes and stuff like that. But I still don't feel that confident knowing that I take my test exactly months from now. I don't feel as confident as I did with Core 1 only because the study mechanics is a little more different.
It's not quite as black and white, as cut and dry as the content of the 1001 for sure. There's a little more troubleshooting, resolving problems, you're going to have to think a little more in that one, I think.
Yeah, it seems like it's incorporating a lot of common sense with this. And I also heard a lot of errors with the PBQs. I'm a little scared about that too, because I'll be pissed if I have to pay knowing that it was their fault. I'm not even gonna lie to you, but I'm not gonna worry about that. I know God got that part, but
it's all you can
do. So basically, when it comes to studying for this test, I'd really probably focus more towards troubleshooting and like real world or real works, the real workspace solutions, I guess you would say, or I don't know. It just seems so vague, everything about the test. I personally went over all the material like twice, but not being confident is my problem. I got to feel confident, you know what I'm saying? But
I think you're right in that the approach of these two exams is so different. For example, on the Core 1, I think the approach is so much focused on understanding the hardware. What does this interface look like? What is the speed of this network connection? It seems to be more along the lines of just memorization. And then, of course, there's a little bit of troubleshooting thrown into it. But I think you're right on the Core 2. There's a lot of troubleshooting thrown into that. I think it's more scenario-based questions. You're not going to get a lot of what I call trivia questions. They're not going to ask how much memory is required to upgrade to Windows 10 Enterprise. They're not going to ask that. It's not there. It's going to be more of a problem where a user has a computer. Here's the specs of this computer. They're not able to upgrade. Why are they not able to upgrade? And then you have to do the troubleshooting. Oh, is it the memory? Is it the storage? Is it what is it? Is it the CPU? You're going to have to break those things down. But unless you know the upgrade paths, you're not able to apply back the troubleshooting issue associated with that. And so many of the questions on the exam are things that are not straightforward. Give me the answer to this. It's more of a scenario that you have to break apart and then figure out. And I almost wanted to mention this on an earlier call, is that a lot of what you do in your job, from the very beginnings of help desk all the way through, are problems in understanding how to properly troubleshoot. Because if you don't troubleshoot properly, you're spending a lot of extra time and wasting a lot of extra time trying to resolve a problem that you should have been able to logically step through at the beginning, whether it's focusing on the core issue or breaking things in half and taking one at a time. There's a lot of different scenarios that you could step through. But I think understanding how to troubleshoot is a valuable skill. They really are drilling you on this skill, especially on the Core 2. So as you go through these studies, make sure you're studying from materials that are asking you questions that are troubleshooting questions, that are asking you to think about the problem and then apply what you know to be able to solve the problem. You're not going to get a lot of gimmies on the exam. And I think you're absolutely right. It's a little bit more of a challenge. Even though there's a month left, a month is a long time. If you can focus on the exam objectives, understand behind the scenes why that objective is important, then you should be able to apply it back to the questions on the exam.
Okay, you really helped me out with that one a lot. You did said something that sparked some in my head, but I really appreciate it, Mr. Professor. I'll probably be calling in a month or two from now.
Best of luck, Angela. You're going to do great.
Thank you.
That's one of the things that is important on these exams, not just A+, but Network Plus, and especially Security Plus, is there are questions that are having you think about the concept that's being presented to you. They are almost never a trivia question. And you're never going to get a question like, for Security Plus, there is the AES encryption. You're never going to get a question that says, what does AES stand for? Or you'll just never get a trivia question. It's always an involved scenario with a number of different variables, and they're asking you what is going to be the best way to resolve this. And it's all this self-contained problem. You can't think outside of this problem. You can't add your own things into the story. It's just what's on the page. And fortunately, the questions are written so well that one of the answers that's there should jump right out at you if you know your content. If you don't know, that it becomes more of a challenge. But if you know the material, it will be very obvious what the answer is, and you should be able to choose that one and keep it going. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to Let's go to the 773 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
My name is Joe, sir. I've talked to you before.
Yes, you have. Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much, sir. Nice to hear you again. Sir, one of the main things that I've seen in this pursuit of IT knowledge is confusion. Because you read a book on on a subject, different books, and they all contradict each other. And when it comes to work, as we know, you mentioned right now, you were talking about the type of questions they ask you. That questions that relates to, the answer to that question is when you have really worked in such an environment with all the variables that happens. So it becomes, then for that you need different books to be able to get you to kind of visualize what will happen in this situation or in this scenario. And at the end you find out you get confused. It is, even the courses that they teach you at these training centers are just general information. They're not enough for you to be able to really understand what's happening in real world. And then, of course, when you go to work, different places got different policies, different procedures, and then you are in the middle of all those things, and you try to apply the knowledge, and you find that it's quite a different world than what it is, what you learn in a book. So what you learn in a book is not really what's happening in the real world, because everybody got their own frame of operations, their own method of operations. So how would you kind of visualize this? How would you answer to this kind of questions? How would you deal with that situation?
Well,
thank you very much, sir, and thank you.
I appreciate it. One of the things that is sort of an international standard, it's sort of something you'll find wherever you go, is there will be nuances to these training materials no matter where you go. There will be perhaps one guide says the best way to do something is this. Another guide might say something completely different. One of the things that I find is important is that you find a set of study materials that is consistent. Consistent with standards, consistent with what people are doing in their normal jobs. There are a number of books written by people who've never done these jobs, and they don't know. They're sort of taking the knowledge of what they've read and that they've heard other people say, and they try to create a sample question around that, and it ends up being a question that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't apply back to the real world. My recommendation is just to avoid those. There's no reason to use these products from places that are not well thought out. I think in some ways, Amazon has really helped along those lines. If you're looking for a book, you can go to Amazon. They have all of these books, and then you can start reading what other people are saying about these books. And I realize there's advantages and disadvantages to doing that. Sometimes these things that people post about a book may not actually be accurate. But because there's so many people posting, you should start to create some level of knowledge about how well a particular product has been made, has been created. I like to think, because I'm someone who has been in the industry, who's been in the trenches and gone through these things, that if I write a troubleshooting question, that there is a base of reality to it. And very often people will send me notes saying, well, I took your practice exam and here's your question and here's what your answer was. Here's a question similar with similar topic that I found somewhere else has a completely different answer. And I said, well, yeah, but that answer doesn't have any basis in reality. So let's talk about what the problem is and how you were able to resolve the problem, regardless of who wrote it or what I put down. So that's some of the problems you're going to run into with all of these books and all of these materials, even to the point of, I mentioned on my last Network Plus study group about how the category of cabling is so misunderstood and how some people think that category 5 can only operate up to speeds of 100 megabit using 100 base TX. And they don't know that it is completely supported on 1000 base T gigabit networks. But if you go to half the websites, maybe more, they say something completely different, even though factually those websites are wrong. But it's almost like we've repeated the wrong information so much that the wrong information is turned into what people know. That's a real challenge to get to that point, because I think that's one where now you don't know who to believe. If you're trying to learn this stuff, you don't know who to believe. I can appreciate that frustration. My recommendation is always go back to the exam objectives. Always go back to the industry standards. If you want to know how Ethernet works, the IEEE made Ethernet. They set the standard for Ethernet. Everybody has to follow the standard that IEEE created. Therefore, that's the standard you should go to. If you have a question or you're trying to decide who's right and who's wrong, the IEEE is right or wrong. Not me, not some other person who wrote a book, not another person who wrote videos. You go back to people who wrote the standard. And if I'm wrong, they'll tell me I'm wrong. And there's been times when I thought it was one thing, it turns out it's something completely different. I had to go back to the standard to read that and realize, wow, we're all wrong on this one. The standard actually says this. And once you know the standards, now you know how to apply those once you get out into the actual real world. But there will always, of course, be a gap between what you're able to learn from a book or from videos and then actually doing it. That's just normal. That's just natural. That's the nature of nature. That's the nature of physics, that you actually have to do it eventually. And then you start realizing, oh, wait, there's a little bit of gradient. There's a little bit of gray areas around this problem, that it's not always unplug and plug it back in and it fixes it. Sometimes it's these other things on the edge that you kind of have to learn by being out in the field. And I think that applies to IT. I think it applies to construction. I think it applies to transportation. I think it applies to insurance. I think it applies to anything you do. It's just with IT, we tend to be very focused on these certs to the point that we almost forget there's a real world out there sometimes. And I hope there's a balance you find from my videos that is, here's what the topic is, but let's see how people are actually using this technology. That balancing act is really important. And sometimes you get that from your study materials and sometimes you don't. But you just do the best you can. Don't be worried that there's a gap. When you get out into the world, you get that job, you start working with this stuff, and you realize, wow, there's stuff I didn't know from my books. That's right. But that's completely normal. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep learning what you're learning, and go beyond the books and learn all of the nuances and try to learn as much of that as you possibly can, because that's what's going to give you the edge to move up into the next tier. I think that's important as well. Let's go back to the phones. 908 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Vander. I'm calling from Georgia.
Hey, Vander.
Hey, I just wanted to, say thank you for everything that you've taught me. I've really been able to apply your teachings in the IT field in my work and even outside of work. I passed the A+. I think it was 2 years ago. Once I learned about, your YouTube channel and all of your testing material, I had just failed the test my second time.
Wow.
And then after doing more studying and, when you were talking about actually really understanding the material and understanding IT, the technologies, and how certain softwares works, as opposed to just trying to memorize it, I was able to pass the next time, and then able to get the job with the public schools.
Nice.
As tech support. After applying there for like 3 years, I was finally able to get it. And even then, moving on to that, I've also been able to start up my own business doing IT support for personal devices, and every now and then I'll get devices, and even when I'm at the school, I'll get devices, not know exactly what the problem is at all, but just with some quick troubleshooting, like you were saying, Abe, earlier, with some quick troubleshooting solutions, I was able to figure it out. And I just want to say I appreciate all the help. I come back every now and then just to learn and be, stay up to date with what's going on in the IT world, because everything's changing and can't stay too stagnant.
It's so true. Congratulations on losing or not getting an exam. And I've been in the same situation, taking a certification exam and failing it for the second time. There's that moment where you think, all right, should I really be doing this? Have I made a bad decision about this? And then you finally buckle down and go, no, we can do this. And you persevere and you push on, and congratulations for doing that. And now you look back, this is years later, you're able now to look back at that. And it's more now about how you were able to keep going rather than dealing with the frustration of the process during the time. I think these are moments that will teach you as an individual, if you are really in it to win it, if you're really somebody who wants to keep pushing this and make that happen. And clearly you had made a decision to keep pushing this and even continue to do that. I love to hear when people are able to take this technology and use it in an entrepreneurial environment. This is sort of what we're doing here. This is a business that I am running. It's got different things associated with it, but it's all based on the technology that we've learned through the years. And I like that we are able to take technology and use it in different ways. And to your point, I like that the simple troubleshooting that we've learned through the years continues to be exactly the same troubleshooting process with everything. Yes, it's different in technology. It's whether it's a cloud-based technology, whether it's a mobile device that's in front of you, you're troubleshooting a tablet, but it's the same troubleshooting process. And even if you've never worked with the technology before, you know that there's going to be the standard set of logic you can apply to it. And I think that also helps as you move through your career too. Congratulations on the things you've done with it. And you're in a great area of the world. There's so many opportunities in the Atlanta area. You really can't go wrong, Vander. Best of luck.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call. It's one of those things that if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to troubleshoot something you've never troubleshot before, it's always the same thing over and over again. Well, let's start at the beginning. Tell me what's going on. Tell me about everything that you see. Are there any error messages? Did anybody grab a screenshot? Are there some logs we can look at? When was this device installed? What version of the software is running on? All those things, it's the normal conversation, whether you're troubleshooting Windows, Linux, a firewall, a router, a switch, whatever it is. It's the same story every time. And so you start gathering all of the pieces of evidence. Now you've got all the evidence. What do we think it is? I think it might be a problem, a bug in the software. Let's try upgrading the software. Okay, next step. What other things could it be? It could be a bad cable. We should try swapping the cable out. All right, we'll put that on the list. What other things could it be? So you start creating this. You may have never touched this technology before in your life. In fact, you may be the one they've given it to and say, fix this thing. We don't know how it works. We know you don't know how it works, but you've now been tasked with fixing it. Go. Now you're responsible for making that work. That, I think, is sometimes the scariest thing, but also can be kind of the fun part of your job. Now you're having to work outside the box. You're having to think about where these things are coming from, and maybe you can find a fun way to put it all together. And ultimately, you're going to learn something too, and you'll now be the expert in that new technology. This is also, I think, if you are ever in a position for how do I move up in this industry? How do I get more valuable in this industry? A caller mentioned it earlier in the day. It's about finding the niche. So for me, the niche for me has changed through the years. It started with me just kind of being a generic field service person, and I was very good at going on site and resolving hardware issues. That got me my first corporate job. The corporate job taught me about operating systems, and I was one of the very first people to really learn how to deploy Windows in a corporate environment over the network. Well, nobody was doing that. Windows was brand new in doing Windows 3.0. Was brand new at being able to do that. Am I dating myself? Yes, I am. But I want to get across, because the same thing applies with today's technologies. So to get across that I was now one of the few people that knew how to do that and do it well. All right, let's take that knowledge and leverage it into the network side of things, since we're doing it over the network. Now started to learn about the protocols. How does Windows talk back and forth? How does TCP communicate at that level? How do you even understand how to read those packets and make Windows work properly? How do you identify inefficiencies and how do you resolve them? It's all in the packets. And was able to become an expert in the packets, which then allowed me to get a job working for the company that made the products that allow you to see the packets. So the same thing applies today. If you're somebody who's getting into the industry and your particular organization deals a lot with the cloud, well, there's your niche. Go find something about the cloud. Maybe it's working with the APIs. Maybe it's working with being able to understand how to orchestrate. Maybe you become an expert in using Python to be able to build out these application instances and tear them back down again. That's valuable stuff. Being able to work at that level is very, very sought after by employers. And it's a niche, whatever it is, it's a niche you can leverage. Maybe the niche is building out the web-based infrastructure or the cloud-based infrastructure. Maybe the niche is the networking piece that allows people to connect to the cloud-based infrastructure. Maybe your niche is the security technologies on the back end that are able to monitor and audit access on the cloud. All of those are niches. All of those are little tiny pieces of this puzzle. And if you can become an expert in that puzzle creation process, you then start to become very, very valuable as an employee. And valuable employees get paid a little bit more money. And I think although we like to have a job where we are appreciated, we also like to have jobs where we are paid well. So that is one where it might help you to think about in your job now, if everything you're working with is very generic or very broad, you need to start finding pieces of it, breaking out those pieces, and becoming an expert in that area. So instead of working with Windows Active Directory, you now need to become an expert in something related to that. Maybe it's breaking down, understanding the trust relationships between different domains. Maybe it's understanding how to migrate those. Maybe it's understanding how to properly or more efficiently manage or audit those. Maybe it's working with PowerShell to automate processes you're doing manually now. Automation's the key, quite honestly. If you can become an expert in, if you can just become a very well-read and have a practical knowledge of PowerShell and or of Python. Let's just take those two, pick one. Become knowledgeable in one of those two things. You will be able to use those skills your entire career. That becomes very, very useful. And if you walk into an employer and they're doing something manually and you say, well, can't we just do a Python script and have that fire off automatically every time this other thing happens? And they go, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, this thing we're wasting our time on and being woken up in the middle of the night and not spending time with our family and coming in late and the dog hates us and the wife's yelling, and why don't we just automate that and then we can all be happier? Yes, let's do that. We will pay you to do that. Great. Let's make that happen, because now you have the skills to be able to make that happen that nobody else had. In fact, without knowing that the possibility even exists, how are they supposed to fix that problem? You know, that's the key. So if you want to follow security, would it be PowerShell? It'd be either one. There's a huge emphasis in security as it relates to Windows, especially Windows in the cloud. There's your place to go on the PowerShell side. And there's a huge emphasis in being able to manage everything in the cloud and manage Linux, Mac OS, and anything else. Being able to integrate with firewalls, being able to pull data from those systems, that might be Python. So like I said, it doesn't matter which one of the, if you don't know either one, don't worry about which one you're choosing. Just pick one. Which one do you think you like more? Maybe spend an hour with each one, and then after that hour say, I kind of like PowerShell better, or I kind of like Python better. All right, well, let's do some more with that one. But pick one of them and start drilling down and start becoming an expert in that and start building out some apps and start building out some things you can do that will automate the conversations that are happening on your system. Do you even have a way to monitor things in your own home? Are you able to see what's happening with we have so much technology in our house. Maybe we start with our router, our internet router. Are we able to pull data from that? Are we able to look at statistics? How can we do that over time? How can I understand how to make that happen? So that I think is going to be valuable regardless of what you're planning to do. And I think those are skills, as I mentioned, Those are skills you'll be able to use your entire career, not just use, but leverage. They will be part of your job. They will be part of what people are hiring you for. They will be part of things that will become very easy for you, but people are willing to pay you a lot of money for. And ultimately, like I said, I like the fact that I enjoy my job, but I also like the fact that maybe they will pay me for that. My family and children would appreciate continuing to be fed and have clothing and a place to live. So that's the key as well. There's a combination. There's a happy balance there to figure out those pieces. Those are only 2 examples. There are many, many places where you can drill down, where you can become the niche. Doesn't have to be PowerShell, doesn't have to be Python. Find the one that works for you and make it happen. It doesn't even have to be scripting. It could be learning everything there is to know about running a firewall. Download a firewall and load it up. And there's plenty of open source firewalls and technologies to use. Maybe you want to become more of an expert in what's happening on the network. Maybe you become an Nmap expert. Maybe you become somebody who really understands Windows and the integration of Windows Server. Find the thing you like, because that's the beauty of IT, is that you can find the thing you like and just drill down and drill down and drill down, and they keep hiring you and paying you money for that thing. And then once you're kind of tired of that thing, you pivot. I did not stay in the help desk my entire career. I did not stay in workstation administration my entire career, or server administration, or network administration, or IT security, or next generation firewalls. I pivoted every time. Once I had learned and become skilled in an area, I used that knowledge to pivot to the next set of technologies that I knew nothing about. And I've said this before, if you're in a room and you're the smartest one in the room about that particular technology, you need another job. You do not need to be the smartest one in the room. There's nowhere for you to go. There's nothing for you to learn. You need to be in a room where you're an idiot. You need to be the dummy. You need to be the one learning. And the only way you can do that if other people in the room are smarter than you. So if you're in a room and you're the smartest one, it feels good. It's comfortable. It's relaxing. There's nothing to worry about. There's no stress, but there's also nowhere to go. So always keep pushing yourself. And when you keep pushing yourself and you keep moving up, you also will keep making money in IT anyway. That's the real benefit. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group, everybody. We've gone extra hour on this one. So I think that's a pretty good place to stop. I want to appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much for being here in this first hour with our Q&A. Thank you for the after show and your questions that you send in. They're always so good. We've got more study groups to come later in the month. I know we're sort of early in the month right now, but if you go to professormesser.com/calendar, you'll see that our next study group is on the 25th of March. I've got a little bit of a gap there for the March timeframe. I apologize that that's what's going on, but that's my world. It's a little chaotic at times, but we will get in a Network Plus study group on the 25th and a Security Plus study group on the 30th, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on those as well. Thank you for being here. We will see you next time on the A Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.